The new kid hardly uttered a sound since he arrived. He kept his eyes glued to the ground, always sitting in absolute silence. Most people didn't even notice him, but the girls did. One afternoon, while he was catching some Z's, they were totally crushing on his looks. One of them even snapped a sneaky pic. Later, she showed it to him grinning like the Cheshire Cat. But just then, her boyfriend barged in. Seeing them, he started making fun of the new guy for being so quiet and thin. The girl brushed it off and told Taksu to chill out and take a seat since class was about to kick off. That day, Taksu spotted his girlfriend fawning over the new guy yet again. She didn't even glance at him. She just plopped down next to Jijon. Because of this distraction, Taksu couldn't concentrate on his game and got nailed right in the face by a rogue ball. At first, he chuckled it off while shooting a frosty glare at the couple, but after the game, Taksu gave a haircut to the kid who tossed the ball, because no one's allowed to embarrass him in public. Coincidentally, that's exactly where Jijon hung out after snacks, so he witnessed the whole debacle. Realizing this, Taksu threatened to give Jijon the same buzz cut, but the MC just stayed quiet, calmly staring back at him. Taksu tried his best, but couldn't squeeze a single drop of fear out of him. So he retreated, claiming he wouldn't do it just to keep the peace with the girls at school. That night, as Jijon was heading home, 2 students approached him, saying that the girl's boyfriend wanted to chat. When Jijon got there, the boyfriend showed him the girl's phone. Her wallpaper was the snap she took of Jijon. She brushed it off, saying it didn't mean a thing and that Jijon should just split. Enraged, the boyfriend slapped her hard, sending her crashing to the ground. "Why are you siding with him instead of me?" he roared. She held her ground. "You call yourself my boyfriend, but you're always out partying with other girls." Furious, he kicked her in the stomach. Just as he lifted his hand to hit her again, Jijon jumped in and blocked the blow. The boyfriend threw a punch at Jijon with all his might, but it barely tickled him. When the boyfriend charged again, Jijon effortlessly dodged and landed a punch that sent him sprawling to the ground. Everyone around fell silent, completely dumbfounded. The other bullies rushed at Jijon, but he took them down one after the other. He then turned back to the boyfriend, pummeling him repeatedly until the girl stepped in and pulled him off. That was when she realized the quiet boy wasn't just silent. He had a dark side lurking beneath the surface. Just as she was leaving school, she saw a disturbing scene unfold. The boys were cornering Jijon, dragging him to confront Taksu. She paused for a moment, watching them from a distance, trying to put the pieces together. But she couldn't just walk away. Making a snap decision, she decided to follow them. Gripping her umbrella tightly, she bolted to the corner and ducked into a hiding spot to watch. Peeking out, she saw Jijon unleashing punches and kicks on all the boys. He looked like a wild animal on the loose. As the boys screamed for him to stop, Arion froze, witnessing that frightening spectacle. As he walked away, the boy, visibly shaken by what happened, passed right by the spot where the girl was cowering under her umbrella. They exchanged glances for just a split second. Then she offered him a cozy spot under her umbrella. But Jijon just turned away from her and wandered off, completely soaked from the downpour. The following morning at school, the other students quickly noticed that Taksu was missing. But hey, that wasn't too surprising. Jijon's absence, though, really stirred the pot. Jaina's friend felt a little down, thinking everything felt pretty hollow without Jijon around. Meanwhile, at a distance, the kid who saw Jijon take on those bullies was telling a grown man all about it. The man, shocked to learn that Taksu got beat up and was now in the hospital, grilled the boy about how his buddy was doing. The kid said Taksu would be stuck in the hospital for a bit because of some facial fractures, and he wasn't keen on visitors since it all felt too embarrassing. He also dropped the bomb that 4 guys ended up getting hurt. The man then wondered who on earth could possibly overpower Taksu in a brawl. The boy spilled the beans, that it was a dude named Jijon, a transfer who didn't say a word, which is why nobody knew anything about him. The man looked defeated upon realizing that 4 people had been taken down by a total nobody. One of the man's goons yanked the boy by the neck, asking if he was trying to hide and dodge trouble. He shot back that he didn't want to step in because it felt like 5 against 1 was really unfair, which was why he stayed put. The henchman flung the boy against the wall while the big boss inquired about where Jijon had transferred from. The boy explained that nobody knew since Jijon was a man of few words, or rather no words at all. The hefty man slapped him, calling him worthless. Then he questioned whether this Jijon had any standout features, anything they could latch onto. Blushing a bit, the boy admitted that Jijon was so handsome he turned heads like a model, plus he looked pretty wealthy too. As he gushed over the young man's good looks, the bulky man gave him another slap, teasing if he had a crush on the kid. Meanwhile, the boss was just trying to piece together the tale of that quiet and enigmatic transfer student Jijon, the dashing fighter who was quite the catch. The man found himself lost in thought, contemplating just how good-looking Jijon really was. The next day, back in his usual groove at school, Jijon swung by the lockers to stow away his stuff. The boy was there, keeping a close watch on him. He'd been instructed to find out what kind of guy Jijon really was. Facing his boss's angry stare, he simply went along with the idea that he should check out the new guy. But when it was time to actually do it, he regretted being tangled in this mess. Jijon opened his locker, which was almost bare. The phone inside buzzed to life, lighting up with incoming messages. He grabbed the phone to read the texts, which congratulated him and let him know he scored that phone for free. It was a bit of a relic, but X-Talk still worked, and whoever was on the other end would listen to whatever concerns Jijon had. The protagonist glanced around, checking for any onlookers. Unfortunately, he didn't spot either of the 2 lurking nearby. Some girl had handed Jijon the phone and seemed super anxious about it all. However, he appeared to brush off her gesture, simply leaving the phone resting on the locker as he strolled away nonchalantly. The kid keeping an eye on him jumped at the chance to snatch the phone Jijon had carelessly left behind. As soon as he grabbed the phone, he started inspecting the model and whether it was unlocked. Suddenly, he got a shove from behind that sent him tumbling to the ground. The girl who had shoved him snatched the phone and took off running. The boy stayed on the ground, confused about what just happened and who that girl was. He felt a surge of irritation at such blatant rudeness, wondering why bullies seem to be on the rampage these days. Yuri was chatting with Yana about her aunt's poodle that just had puppies and how she wanted to adopt one, but her dad was totally against it. But she noticed Yana wasn't really paying attention, lost in her own thoughts again. She wondered if Yana was worried about Jijon since it was the second day he'd ditched class. Glancing ahead, she finally spotted him. There he was, standing tall but looking completely out of it. When Yana saw him getting closer, she froze like a deer in headlights. She quickly passed her belongings to her friend and raced over to him, giving him a bear hug that caught everyone off guard. With tears shimmering in her eyes, she voiced her worry and asked if he was all right. She made sure he knew she'd never forget that he had saved her life. The boy watching them realized his theory was spot on. Girls were totally into Jijon. He jotted down some notes about Jijon on his phone, stating he showed up a little late, that girls were smitten with him, but he still hadn't said a word. By the end of the day, as he left school, the protagonist followed his usual route. A couple of guys were hanging out along that path. When one of them spotted the boy, he pointed out how much he stood out from the crowd and alerted his buddy with a whistle. They trailed the boy on their scooters, closing in to surround him, trying to scare him into not leaving. They inquired if he was Jijon, and as expected, the boy stayed silent. His silence, however, confirmed he was indeed the target they were after. Then one of the guys instructed him to get on the bike, claiming he was there to give him a ride. He asked Jijon if he had ever heard of Kang Do-il from Disao Technical High School. He went on to explain that once Kang entered the second year, he became a legend, getting into the school's top 3, and everyone knew who he was. After all, Disao was on an entirely different level from Jijon's school, which was basically a hangout for nerds. He added that Kang wanted to meet him and assured him there was no need to be scared, since it was just an invite for now, and he wouldn't be facing any deadly consequences. However, Jijon stood there like a statue, getting on their nerves, to the point where they started screaming at him to hop on the bike. One of the goons yanked at the boy's backpack and menacingly asked if he'd rather get on the bike after he couldn't walk, or if he wanted to do it while they were still being nice. Jijon just dropped the backpack and kept walking, which sent the attackers into a rage, causing them to sprint after him. The boy dove into the first tight alleyway he spotted. One of the guys tried to follow, but ended up smacking right into the wall instead. The other guy, however, kept chasing him. Not even a massive staircase could stop this guy, who zoomed up it on his motorcycle. Just as he was about to catch Jijon halfway up, the boy gave a swift kick to one of the trash bags, sending it flying at the motorcycle rider. This sent him rolling down the staircase, bike and all, and he landed smack on top of another henchman who had just stumbled in after his own mishap with the wall. Watching the motorcycle tumble down the steps, one of the henchmen asked the other, scratching his head, "What in the world did you do?" They both scrambled to their feet and bolted, chasing after the boy who was already making his getaway. Spotting him whip around a tight corner, they picked up speed, eager to catch up. But when they reached the spot where Jijon had darted, they were greeted by yet another massive set of stairs. About halfway up, they spotted a boy taking off. Once they finally cornered him and spun him around, they realized it wasn't the kid they were after. This just made them even angrier. They let their frustrations fly at the poor kid, all because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. While they yelled and shoved, the young boy Jijon watched from the rooftops and slipped away unnoticed once again. Back at the henchman's hideout, the guys reported that they completely dropped the ball on capturing Jijon. The hot-tempered hefty guy let loose with some choice words, cursing them for their incompetence and giving them a swift kick. They insisted the boy had zoomed through an alley that looked more like a maze, making him impossible to catch. The boss, Kang Do-il, felt his anxiety ramping up with each passing second. He asked Seong-min if he had figured anything out about Jijon. Seong-min, passing over his phone, replied that he had dug up as much info as he could. Kang Do-il glared at the 3 pieces of information. Seong-min managed to scribble down and fumed. "Is this what you call an investigation?" The hefty man then ordered Seong-min to join the others on the ground. The boss instructed them to release Seong-min, but insisted that he must bring Jijon to the back gate after school the next day. He asked Seong-min, "Can you handle this task?" and assigned Daishik to be in charge of capturing the boy. He wrapped up, stating he needed to meet Jijon by the following day. The hefty man went along with the orders, while Seong-min grew increasingly alarmed, realizing he was getting deeper into the mess. Bright and early the next morning, Seong-min was picking up 2 sodas when a buddy showed up asking, "Is one of those for me?" Seong-min shook his head, replying, "No way, that's not happening." His friend then asked, "So who's the soda for?" Spotting Jijon walking by Seong-min, seized the moment. He took off after him, sneaking up from behind to say hi. He asked, "You doing okay?" and offered him a soda. He explained, "I just want to clear the air because it may have looked like I was part of Taksu's crew, but I only hung out with them a few times." He continued, "And on the day of the showdown, I felt a rush seeing Taksu get smacked around without being able to fight back. It lifted a huge weight off my chest, and that's why I'm here to say thanks." Jijon, however, didn't even glance his way and just kept on walking. This was exactly what Seong-min expected from someone like Jijon, and now he fretted about how he'd convince him to get to the back gate. Nevertheless, the hefty man's threats pushed him forward. The day dragged on, and lunchtime finally rolled around. Everyone flooded out of the classroom to eat, but Jijon decided to snooze a bit longer in the room. As Jijon got up, Seong-min peered at him from behind the door. It finally hit him why he had never spotted Jijon in the cafeteria. He packed his lunch all by himself. Jijon settled down in his usual lunch spot, and as he plopped onto the bench, he found his phone buzzing again with a message asking, "Is today's lunch just bread again?" That's when Jijon caught sight of someone trying to hide while crouching. It was Aryam attempting to chat with him through his phone. Seizing the moment while he was busy with the device, the girl began to flood him with texts. In her messages, she asked, "Do you always munch alone up on the rooftop?" and revealed, "I do that too." She chimed in with, "I've caught a glimpse of you a few times, which made me want to reach out." As Jijon was searching for who was messaging him, Aryam sent another stating, "I'm to your left." When he turned his head, he spotted her waving her hand before quickly dropping it again. Through a message, she admitted facing people isn't easy for me either. She added, "I heard you don't talk much and that's something I can relate to." She then asked through text, "So, what's keeping you so quiet?" Just when Jijon was about to craft his response, someone barged in shouting at. It was Seong-min attempting to play it cool like their run-in was just a coincidence. He mentioned he was there to munch on his bread and inquired, "What are you eating?" Without waiting for a response, Seong-min plopped down next to Jijon, proclaiming, "I'll join you for lunch." An awkward silence hung in the air as the two chewed in complete quiet. All of a sudden, Seong-min started sniffling, catching Jijon's attention. Through his tears, Seong-min admitted that he truly had no friends. That's why he stuck around the Taksu guys. He couldn't bear the thought of being alone. He suggested to Jijon that since they were both loners, they might as well become friends. Too bad Jijon didn't even seem to hear him. Seong-min's plan flopped miserably, and not even his tears could sway Jijon. Our main man Jijon stood up to leave. However, Seong-min wasn't about to let his efforts go down the drain. He clung to Jijon's arm, pleading, "Are we friends or what?" As expected, Jijon completely brushed him off. He just walked away, leaving Seong-min there, still hanging on for an answer. Shortly after near dismissal time, Daishik texted Seong-min, asking where he was and why he hadn't brought Jijon to him. The teacher was wrapping up class, and Seong-min, feeling frantic, pondered how to make it happen. He couldn't throw in the towel, so he went after his target. He searched high and low but couldn't find Jijon anywhere, feeling increasingly anxious, imagining that Jijon had already skedaddled. When he hit the 5th classroom, Jijon wasn't the first thing he laid eyes on. But pretty soon he spotted Jijon perched by the window, gazing out at the hustle and bustle outside. It looked like Jijon was auditioning for a commercial before heading out. With more messages from Daishik asking how much longer he would take, Seong-min knew he had to act fast. He then called Jijon over for a chat. He said he had spoken to his mom, telling her he made a friend, and she was ecstatic, insisting that he bring his new buddy to her workplace to meet her. He then asked, "Hey, can you tag along, just to act like my buddy?" Seong-min figured using his mom as bait would make it hard for Jijon to say no, so he lounged around waiting for Jijon's reply. Since Jijon was tight-lipped, Seong-min decided to approach him, steering him in the right direction. He mentioned to reach my mom's job, we need to use the back gate. It'll be quicker that way. Seong-min knew that in that neck of the woods, if you were gullible, you wouldn't last long. He took the chance to let Daishik know they were sneaking through the back gate. Casually, Daishik strolled by Jijon and bumped into him pretty hard. Jijon lost his footing and nearly hit the ground, but Daishik caught him by the strap of his backpack, saying, "Watch yourself, buddy. If you throw in the towel so easily, there's no reason the boss would have waited this long." He shoved Jijon against the wall like a bag of chips. "Nice to meet the quiet type." He grabbed Jijon by the neck, stating, "Your face may be good-looking, but from what I see, your skills are nothing to write home about." Jijon planted his foot on Daishik's chest and pushed him back, breaking free from his grip. When Jijon hit the ground, the cell phone he had snagged slipped from his pocket, rolling toward a nearby drain. Daishik lunged at him again, sneering, "Is that all you've got?" A punch flew at Jijon, who blocked it with his arm, but the force sent him sliding backward, inching him closer to the drain. Quickly, Jijon seized the chance to scoop up his cell phone just in time to stop it from falling in. Filled with fury, Daishik roared, "I'll wipe the floor with you next time, Jijon." This young man quickly jumped up, ready to throw down. Daishik then mocked, asking, "You think your skinny frame can handle a brawl with—" In the meantime, the other boy observing from a distance felt bad for dragging Jijon into this mess, worrying that the hefty Daishik would wipe the floor with him. Next, Daishik charged at Jijon, daring him to block the incoming strike, but Jijon cleverly used his backpack as a shield. Nonetheless, the blow sent him crashing into the wall. Daishik looked surprised by the backpack defense and admitted that Jijon was sharper than he appeared. Jijon quickly tossed out the stuff from his backpack. Daishik then sprinted at him, yelling that his little trick wouldn't work anymore. As he swung, Jijon nimbly dodged. In a slick move, he looped the backpack strap around Daishik's leg, yanking with all his might to throw him off balance. The chunky guy hit the ground like a sack of flour. Daishik was left dumbfounded, trying to grasp what just happened. As he attempted to rise, Jijon was already gearing up for his next move, a direct kick aimed at his face, which landed perfectly. The hefty dude could barely wrap his head around where that scrawny kid found all that power. The onlooker stood there, stunned and disbelieving, witnessing Daishik being overpowered. Daishik lay on the floor, his face showing signs of wear and tear. Meanwhile, Jijon turned away, looking rather smug as he picked up the phone that had dropped. But then Daishik suddenly sprang back up and charged at him, yelling that the fight wasn't over yet. He landed a solid punch right into Jijon's chest, sending him crashing to the floor. Then he scooped up the phone Jijon had dropped and with a cheeky grin asked, "Is this gadget really that crucial to you?" Daishik proclaimed, "I gotta take it anyway, and for that Jijon has to be brought along alive." Out of the blue, a biker zipped into view. Daishik hopped on the bike and warned Jijon that if he wanted his phone back, he needed to head over to Alley Park. As he sped away, he cheekily added that a little surprise awaited him. The terrified little boy rushed over to Jijon to see if he was okay. He was amazed to discover that Jijon was completely unscathed. Curiously, he asked what Jijon planned to do now that his phone was gone. He cautioned that if there was any juicy stuff on that phone, his private life could be exposed and that would land him in hot water. Jijon then replied, "My mom can wait until next time. I need to dash over to Alley Park." The other kid thought he had given it his all up to this point, and now the only thing left to do was see if Jijon would actually head to Alley Park. Jijon, our hero, quietly stood up and started striding forward. The observing boy was shocked to realize that Jijon was genuinely going after his phone. Jijon soon found himself at a massive wooden staircase. He began his ascent, passing a few shady-looking characters. As he neared the top of the stairs, he came across a group of folks who all looked like they were waiting for him. They formed a line, and at the end stood their ringleader Euphoric, who looked pretty pleased to see Jijon arrive. Waving Jijon's phone, the leader asked, "Is this what you came looking for?" Jijon simply marched up to him to grab his phone back. The leader remarked, "I didn't find anything important on here. No contacts, no call history, just a few texts from some girl who seemed to be keeping an eye on him." Given the phone's unimpressive contents and his surprise that Jijon made it this far just for that, the leader asked, intrigued, "What does this actually mean?" Jijon halted in front of him and reached out his hand asking for his phone back. The boss questioned, "Is she your girlfriend or maybe just a crush?" He admitted that this whole situation had piqued his curiosity. Annoyed with the unfolding events or the lack of answers, the leader sent a quick message mentioning he had moved some things around rapidly. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Ariam was receiving some texts. The message from the number Jijon had given the girl instructed her to head to Alley Park, promising that if she showed up, she'd get to be his girlfriend. If she went after seeing that text, it would clearly show how much she liked Jijon. The leader declared, "If Jijon and the girl end up together, you better bring me a sweet treat later." Jijon stayed quiet, keeping his hand out patiently, waiting for his phone to be returned. The assailant asked, "Do you really want that?" and added that his crew had had a tough time getting him to that spot. That notorious Taksu had always been a bit too reckless, and the boss figured it was only a matter of time before he got himself into trouble. Still, they'd been schoolmates back in elementary. He then asked, "Are you ready to face the music?" The boy remained silent, which only made the boss smile, impressed by his calm and quiet resolve. The boss then swore that if you could tough it out against my goons, I'd hand back your cell phone. He elaborated as a new kid, "Jijon, you might not know just how fierce the turf wars are around here." By standing up to Taksu, he had basically jumped headfirst into the power struggle. And finally he declared, "I'm just waiting to see what you've got." Without delay, the biggest guy lunged at him, fueled by a thirst for payback. He swung a punch, but the kid gracefully dodged it like a pro. This only made the hefty attacker madder, and he hollered at the other goons, "Let's rain down blows on that kid." Before long, all the attackers charged at the kid, who despite being an expert at dodging, didn't fight back. He just redirected the hands of his attackers midway. Still, with the sheer number of attackers, a few hits landed on him, but he managed to shield his face from most of the blows. He stumbled and went down at one of the assailant's feet. This guy then landed a clean hit to Jijon's face. Seeing him fall, the others took their chance, kicking him while he was down. The boss just stood by, watching the kid get pummeled. He thought to himself why the kid only defended without retaliating. He wondered if the boy just didn't care about this hierarchy nonsense. One of the guys next to the boss remarked, "Even after all that beating, that notorious kid hasn't let out a peep. Does he really prefer sacrificing himself over yelping?" This bold attitude made the boss all the more curious. He wanted to hear Jijon's voice that was so different from his tough guy image. So he roared, "Whoever can make the kid scream will snag a pair of limited edition Nike Air Jordan sneakers as a reward." This pledge revved up the group to crank up their assault on Jijon. They pounded away while Jijon stayed purely defensive. The boss then thundered, "Jijon, show us what you're really made of and prove you're one of a kind." Just then, Dishik appeared telling everyone to back off. He kicked the boy and challenged him, asking where that spark Jijon had shown earlier went. The main character then collapsed to the ground, his face a mess. An attacker, seizing the moment, picked up a big rock. He turned to the boss and proclaimed he was going to make that poor kid scream. He added that he never liked the way Jijon looked and this would put an end to it. But the boss stepped in, kicking the guy's hand, so he dropped the rock. "Do you want to meet your end, humiliating yourself like this?" The boss yanked Jijon by his shirt, pulling him up to his eye level. "Why do you seem to enjoy taking hits? What's the secret you're hiding?" He declared that this whole mess wouldn't wrap up until Jijon proved his true value. "It won't stop until you show what you're worth." The young man who had sold Jijon out to the group was hiding, watching as they messed with him. As expected, this gang was definitely more intimidating than Taksu's crew. While he was pondering, he noticed Orium making her way toward the chaos. In that moment, the phone in the gang boss's hand buzzed. When he checked the text, it read, "Let Jijon go." Immediately, the boss scanned the area, trying to find out who sent it, and he spotted the girl standing there, phone in hand. He told Jijon that maybe this was the moment he'd find the push to fight, since his future lady love was in attendance. "Now that your potential girlfriend is around, you might just muster up the courage to throw down." With a quick nod, the boss signaled one of his goons to saunter over to the girl. He waved his phone like a magic wand, shouting for her to come closer. "Get your butt over here." While she was busy typing another message, one of the henchmen sidled up to her. He seized her arm, clearly smitten by her charm. She tried to wiggle away, but he held on tighter, asking her where she thought she was sneaking off to. "Where do you think you're going?" The young man, watching from behind a tree, felt fear creeping in as he saw his crush in trouble, but he stayed frozen like a deer in headlights. The henchman pulled the girl closer to their crew, telling her she ought to check out her little boyfriend's face. Then he tossed her into the arms of the gang boss. Ariam and Jijon exchanged glances, recalling the fleeting moments they had shared before. There stood the girl with a bruised arm, visibly shaken. Her presence certainly caught the henchman's attention. The hefty guy asked if she was there to be that rogue's girlfriend, claiming the lad was a tad preoccupied at the moment. "You here because you want to be that rogue's girlfriend. He's kinda busy right now. Jijon's a real pain in the neck, and he's about to get schooled." The girl in response typed a message to make it clear that the young man was merely a friend and restated her plea for them to let him go. "Just a friend, so let him go." Then the boss asked why she wasn't talking and inquired about her name. "Why aren't you saying anything? What's your name?" Not getting a reply, he picked up on their shared silence. Everyone began ribbing the duo, chuckling at how they were only texting one another, calling them oddballs. They communicate exclusively via text. How quirky. The boss proclaimed it didn't matter who did it, but someone had to get them to talk, and there'd be a prize for that. Doesn't matter who goes for it, but someone's got to get them to spill, and they'll snag a reward for it. The hefty guy taunted if the girl was also in line for the reward, and the boss nodded in agreement. Instantly, the thugs circled the girl, starting to torment her, insisting that her silence meant she'd accept anything they threw at her. Some of them held her arms, while others yanked at her hair. Meanwhile, Jijon simply stood by watching the chaos unfold. The boss challenged what he planned to do next if he kept acting like that. Meanwhile, the thugs didn't let up on the girl. One goon holding her face demanded to know why she was tight-lipped, trying to coax her into talking. Suddenly, one thug got clocked right in the face. Jijon glanced at the knocked-over guy, and just as he turned to figure out what was going on, he got a punch right in the chops. The guy in the hat sneered at him, but before he could blink, Jijon landed a punch, knocking him senseless to the ground. That fired up the boss, who saw Jijon was finally in the fight for real. After shoving the attackers away from the girl, Jijon charged at the others. The girl on her end was still gripped by fear amid the unfolding drama. The whole gang then rallied together to take on the young man assaulting him with punches. He yanked one of them by the leg and hurled him onto the rest, but another guy leaped in to catch him. In a flash, Jijon snatched him by the hair and unleashed a flurry of punches to his mouth. One of the thugs tried to boot the young man, but he ducked, caught the aggressor's leg, and sent him crashing down. Suddenly, the hefty fellow charged in, barreling toward Jijon, shouting that he was about to finish this. That was Daishik. Meanwhile, the guy with the pinned leg shrieked for Jijon to let him loose. Jijon responded with a kick to the man's chin, knocking him out cold. He then backed off to face Daishik, who was swinging a punch that Jijon narrowly evaded. Jijon stepped on his leg for leverage and delivered a brutal knee to Daishik's face, but he wasn't done yet. He followed up with a swift kick to his opponent's face. The boss was getting more and more excited, realizing this young man was a real gem. Meanwhile, the showdown between Jijon and Daishik raged on. Daishik clutched him with all the strength he could muster. Missing a tooth and steaming mad, he could not believe he was getting schooled again. Jijon raised his arms high, throwing elbows right into Daishik's face, zeroing in on his eyes. He kept clobbering Daishik's face with his elbows, making him lose even more teeth and eventually pass out. Everyone stood there in shock. Nobody booted up, expecting to see Daishik hit the mat. Jijon's battle against the whole gang pressed on. In the midst of punches and kicks, his foes were toppling like dominoes. Meanwhile, the gang leader just watched, wowed by the young man's move. He found him even more intriguing than he had bargained for. Then one of the gang members grabbed Ariam by the neck, trying to force Jijon to back off from his pals. Seeing this, the protagonist flashed back to something from his past. A woman with a cap held by a man screaming for help. Jijon's anger bubbled over and he marched toward them as the thug warned him not to get close. Another guy even tried a sneak attack from behind, but with a single elbow strike, he sent that fool crashing down. Jijon propelled himself forward, darting toward the man holding Ariam. The thug screamed, paralyzed with fear from Jijon, but his scream was cut short by a punch to the face. As he hit the floor, Jijon kept the pedal to the metal, landing punch after punch on. The gang leader then sauntered over and told Jijon to quit it, insisting he needed to get his phone back since he earned that right. The boss then extended an invitation for Jijon to join his crew, whining about how he couldn't stand to leave a desire unfulfilled. The young man, fuming, pulled back from the aggressor and strolled toward the gang leader. The boss, visibly shaken, asked what Jijon was up to since the brawl had supposedly wrapped. He reiterated the order to stop and questioned that murderous look in Jijon's eyes. Ignoring the boss, Jijon lunged to throw a punch. However, the boss found his fighting stance, sidestepped Jijon's punch, leaving the young man in complete disbelief. The boss returned the favor with a punch to Jijon's chin, sending him sprawling backwards. Jijon hit the ground nearly out cold. The boss simply reiterated that he had told him to stop. The boy stayed on the ground, motionless and quiet. The gang boss told him to think twice about the offer he laid out, mentioning he'd be back to hear what he decided. Then he chucked a cell phone at him and called his crew to bounce, and everyone followed without missing a beat. Who was that jerk? The chubby guy wondered aloud as they descended the stairs. He also asked if the leader really planned on bringing that quiet loser on board. He wrapped up his thoughts by saying it was creepy to see that guy's eyes roll back like that. In response, the leader couldn't help but think about the punch he narrowly dodged from Jijon. But that kid had reacted in a flash, managing to just graze him. That kid had a knack for spotting openings, which suggested some serious skill. This only fueled his desire to recruit him into the gang. Meanwhile, Jijon and Ariam hung back at the scene of the brawl. He plopped down on a bench, clearly wiped out after that intense showdown. Ariam was fretting over Jijon's state. Suddenly she turned and took off running. At that moment, Jijon's cell phone buzzed, signaling new messages coming in. The girl's message let him know she had dashed off to grab some medicine and would be back shortly. He recalled the tricky spot Ariam had landed in because of him. He mulled over everything for a bit, then left the cell phone on the bench and took off. A kid who had been secretly watching was scared of Jijon, convinced that had it been a straight-up fight, he would have wiped the floor with all his opponents. Finally, someone impressive had showed up at his school. As he walked past the bench, he noticed a cell phone and realized it belonged to Jijon. Checking the messages, he figured out that Ariam had sent them to Jijon. It clicked for him that she had feelings for him. Then he spotted the girl coming back with the medicine for Jijon and wondered what he should do next. Being the coward he was, he opted to bolt from there. When the girl reached the bench, she found neither Jijon nor a trace of him. The boy kept sprinting until he was a good distance away. While running the cell phone, he picked up buzzed with incoming messages. They were from Ariam saying she had gotten the medicine but noticed he had left before she returned and asking if he was all right. Sungmin was taken aback by Jijon's apparent indifference, especially since the girl was really worried and Jijon hadn't even bothered to grab the phone. Sungmin was torn about what to do next. The girl kept firing off messages, sharing her name and class. She expressed gratitude for his help and asked if they could slowly start chatting from that point on. Sungmin was plagued by hesitation. Should he respond or just leave her hanging? He wondered if he should pretend to be Jijon, even just for a brief moment. Suddenly, a message popped up on the girl's cell phone. She was shocked to get a reply. It simply said, a short and sweet yes to her question. The next day, Seungmin was showing the footage to his buddy. The video displayed Jisun taking on the entire gang all by himself. His friend asked, was that the guy you called unlucky? Seungmin nodded, still surprised at witnessing the whole scene unfold live. The friend remarked, after this Jisun's gonna be super popular. Seungmin felt irritated because his crush Ariam seemed all into that jerk, and to top it off, Jisun was giving the girl the cold shoulder, leaving Seungmin totally perplexed. What's the game plan? While Seungmin was deep in thought, his buddy chimed in, if we slap that on YouTube, we'll rack up millions of views. I'm totally filming. The friend dashed off and Seungmin hurried after him, shouting, hey, give me my phone back. In his rush, he collided with a dude knocking off the guy's tie clip and hastily apologized. He had bumped into Kim Jin-woo, a second-year student and the second biggest legend at Baekdong High. Recognizing the fellow, Seungmin quickly bent down to retrieve the fallen clip, saying, I'll fix that for you. Shaking like a leaf, he put it back where it belonged. The guy then slapped Seungmin across the face, turned around and strutted off. The beefy guy with Kim Jin-woo warned Seungmin, watch yourself, buddy. Seungmin's friend asked if he was alright, and Seungmin, fuming, shot back that he got smacked around because of him. His friend quipped that getting hit with just a single slap was impressive, considering that jerk's reputation for being a tough. He concluded that they were all a bunch of crazy fighters. Then his friend redirected his attention to something more pressing. Yena approached Jisun, curious about the bandages on his face. The protagonist's rising fame was really rubbing Seungmin the wrong way. Ariam and Yena were clearly mesmerized by him. Speaking of Ariam, she happened to be passing by as well. Seungmin tried to make a move toward her, hoping to seem sympathetic, but she ignored him completely and just walked on. As expected, if he wanted to get close to her, he'd need to befriend Jisun first. While Seungmin was contemplating his approach, his friend was sneakily recording the video of Jisun's brawl with the gang for YouTube. The boys were giving the kid whose hair had been buzzed by Taksu a hard time. They doodled a face on the back of his head and teased that he looked more dapper now. Gagumon was feeling down about all the mockery, but the teasing had only just begun. One of the boys quipped that from now on he should only walk backward. Terrified of getting walloped, the kid complied. He wandered blindly, guided by the two boys. Suddenly, the ground vanished beneath him, and he lost his balance, tumbling down the stairs. Just before he hit the ground hard, Jisun caught him, preventing serious injury. Yena, who was with the protagonist, checked in on Gogumon, asking if he was alright. But when she spotted the back of his head, she burst out laughing, even as he explained about the bullies. Trying to hold back her giggles, Yena apologized to Gogumon. Meanwhile, Jisun wasn't amused by the prank, and Gogumon mentally thanked him. Later in the school gym, while one student kept an eye on the door, two others were throwing punches inside. Surrounded by cheering classmates who were egging on the fighters, it was quite the spectacle. People were even placing bets on those bouts. Kim Jin-woo found the fight dull until a kid handed him his phone to show a video. It was that video of Jisun throwing punches uploaded earlier by Seungmin's buddy. The view count was shooting up faster than a rocket. Kim Jin-woo asked if that fellow was from their school, and upon hearing he probably was because, hey, same uniform, he raised an eyebrow. They were both totally wowed by the kid's fighting skills, but the video was shot from so far back it looked like a scene from a grainy old movie. If he really was from that school, it was going to be the talk of the town. So Kim Jin-woo went on a mission asking everyone in the gym if any new transfers had shown up lately. One boy piped up that there was this quiet dude in the next class, claiming he was in class 5. There were whispers that Taksu ended up in the hospital because of that student, but nobody really knew for sure since no one talked about it much. Kim Jin-woo was practically bouncing off the walls at the thought of him beating Taksu, asking one of his buddies to dig up more dirt on the guy. Seemed like a fun character. At lunchtime, some boys called Gogumon to hang with them, but he pulled a classic lame excuse and bailed. As Jisun stepped out of his classroom, Gogumon pounced and said he had snagged some bread, asking if they could chow down together. Since Jisun didn't exactly give a yes or no, Gogumon just stuck by him, claiming it was their new thing to eat together every now and then. When they hit the rooftop, Sungmin was already there, but Gogumon's shadow next to Jisun had him scratching his head in confusion. One insisted he was there to munch with Jisun, while the other chimed in that he tagged along for the same reason. When Sungmin turned to chat with Jisun, he noticed the drawings on the back of Gogumon's head and burst out laughing, saying he would always be the goofy type. But Gogumon insisted he wasn't trying to be a comedian. He explained that his body bore the scars of school violence, and hiding it wouldn't make the problem vanish. You can't just dodge the truth, the boy concluded, and asked Sungmin to snap a picture for him. Not really catching on to why he needed a photo, the boy took one anyway. While doing so, Jisun's phone in Sungmin's pocket buzzed. Moving away from the guys, he told them to dig in without him. He'd be right back. He pulled the phone from his pocket, checking Ariam's message, wishing Jisun a delightful lunch. However, in a classic mix-up, he thought the message was for himself, and replied wishing her a delightful lunch too. That little message made Ariam beam like it was Christmas morning. Out of the blue, Jaemin barged in through the door and scared. Sungmin blurted out, asking what he was doing there. Jaemin sauntered right over to where Jisun was relaxing, claiming he had heard the quiet boy usually occupied the rooftop during lunch. Jisun confirmed it was true, and he leaned in even closer. He thrust his phone forward, showing the fight video, and asked if that was him throwing down. Sungmin about lost it when he found out his friend had actually posted a video on YouTube. Gogumon asked what was the fuss all about. Jaemin explained that there were tons of rumors swirling around, and he was dying to see the kid's fighting skills up close. But Jisun just brushed him off, making Jaemin's face get redder than a tomato. Already wind up for a punch, Jaemin asked if he wasn't hearing. When he aimed a swing at Jisun, the latter effortlessly sidestepped it like it was a slow-motion scene in a movie. Jaemin kept throwing punch after punch, but each time he missed, his anger just cranked up higher. He then remarked that since the kid couldn't rise, that was how he'd be taken down. He swung for another hit, but the kid dodged once more. In retaliation, Jisun landed a perfect kick right on his opponent's This completely threw him off balance, causing him to wobble for a moment. Soon enough, Jaemin took a nosedive, crashing face first into the bench. The bully began wailing in agony after the collision. As Jaemin howled, Jisun looked at him with a gaze full of disdain. Jaemin's face was smeared with blood, courtesy of the bench that had graciously donated a fractured nose. While glaring at Jisun, Jaemin sensed an overwhelming presence radiating from the boy. Paralyzed by fear, he fled on the spot. The other two spectators witnessing this train wreck of an exit were left impressed by how fast he hightailed it out of there. Gugumon, looking puzzled, asked Jisun what he really was, finding his essence rather peculiar. Sungmin then spilled the beans that it was Jisun who had sent Taksu to the hospital. This bombshell only made Gugumon respect Jisun even more, but Sungmin cautioned that the fact Jaemin was after him was no small matter. He elaborated that Jaemin ran with Kim Jinwoo's gang, and that Kim Jinwoo was notorious for dragging people into battles when he spotted talent. And now it seemed Jisun was on Kim Jinwoo's radar. Sungmin also mentioned he'd heard tales of some folks volunteering to throw down for cash, and a guy like Jisun could easily rake in a bundle. Gugumon, fuming, wondered what kind of nonsense he was rambling on about, and since Jisun was a man of few words, he insisted on refusing the offer for him. He surmised that Jisun didn't seem to care much for brawls or flexing his muscle. Gugumon then declared himself as Jisun's spokesperson, claiming that as friends, now he had the right to step in for him. Sungmin, however, questioned the authenticity of that friendship, but Gugumon stood firm on its truth. Back in class for the afternoon session, Jisun's entrance stirred up quite the buzz. A handful of classmates, phones ready, showed off a video asking if it was really him, hoping that, if it was, he'd at least give them a nod. Gugumon jumped in, telling them to leave Jisun be, and that if they had something to say, they should come to him first. His interruption irritated everyone, who promptly closed in on Jisun. Just then, the door flew open, and Kim Jinwoo swaggered into the classroom. He halted at the front, asking who the new kid was. Everyone hesitated to point at Jisun, but Gugumon standing right next to him attracted attention. Kim Jinwoo then turned to address the two. However, Gugumon stepped in front of Jisun. When Kim Jinwoo approached, he questioned Gugumon's intentions. With some hesitation, Gugumon responded that he was Jisun's buddy and representative, hence Kim Jinwoo should direct his questions to him first. Kim Jinwoo's bulky goons demanded to know who Gugumon thought he was, but Gugumon insisted on being the go-to for communication. Slapping Gugumon across the face, one of the goons mocked him for being an idiot. As he staggered, Gugumon flipped onto his back, revealing a face drawn onto the nape of his neck to the goons. One of the henchmen yanked Gugumon by his shirt collar, hoisting him up while cracking a laugh about how this guy was really something else. Suddenly, Jisun sprang to his feet as if powered by some unseen force. Kim Jinwoo asked, "Are you the punk who broke Jimin's nose?" Receiving no reply, Kim Jinwoo handed him a business card and inquired if Jisun had ever heard of his academy. He claimed he sent Jimin to roll out the welcome mat, but when that flopped, he figured he'd deliver the invite himself. Noticing the kid's total lack of excitement, Kim Jinwoo switched gears, asking, "Do you like raking in the dough?" That's when Gugumon jumped up, cutting them off. He declared that Jisun was totally uninterested in throwing punches and wouldn't be caught dead at the arena. Kim Jinwoo, done with Gugumon's interruptions, gave him a swift kick to the chest, launching him backward like a rag. Gugumon awkwardly tumbled onto some chairs, crashing down. Kim Jinwoo stalked over and snapped, "Don't you know when to zip it?" He followed up with, "Why are you acting like a clown?" by jumping in the middle of this. He barked at him to be quiet and stay put. Then he started stomping on Gugumon, who was sprawled out on the ground. While Kim Jin-woo was busy doing his best impression of a boot camp instructor, Ji-soon tapped him on the shoulder, prompting him to turn around. The two exchanged a long, intense stare. Kim Jin-woo shot back, "Get your hand off me, because I can't stand it when something or someone gets too cozy with me." Ji-soon tightened his grip on Kim Jin-woo's shirt, clearly catching him off guard. The muscle-bound goons lumbered toward Ji-soon, barking at him to get his grubby hands off Kim Jin-woo. Ji-soon effortlessly sidestepped the henchman's punch and countered with a perfect knee to the guy's face, making him spit out blood and howl in agony. The guy toppled over tables and chairs but stubbornly refused to call it quits. He grabbed a chair, ready to launch it, and proclaimed, "Ji-soon, you're done for," with a ridiculous level of confidence. Ji-soon leapt out of the way, landing on one of the tables and kicked off his counterattack. He closed the gap and kicked his foe in the face, sending him crashing down like he was made of cardboard. The kid stood tall on the table, radiating a fierce energy that had his classmates convinced they weren't hallucinating from the last video. Furious, the hefty student rose, hoisting a table over his head and roaring, swearing vengeance against Ji-soon. Just then, the teacher strolled in, took one look at the chaos and demanded an explanation, scolding them about the brawl while wondering why Ji-soon was standing on the desk. Kim Jin-woo jumped in, claiming it was merely a prank to smooth things over. He turned to Gugumon affectionately, calling him agent, and warned he'd be in touch to have a chat with Ji-soon. He strolled toward the door, giving the teacher's shoulder a friendly pat as he passed, telling him to kick off the class. Later, when classes wrapped up, Gugumon shared the day's antics with Sungmin, likening it to a scene straight out of a movie where they couldn't even get close to Ji-soon. Sungmin lamented not catching the action live and asked why Ji-soon was still hanging around. Gugumon explained that the teacher had asked him to stick around, even though he hadn't thrown the first punch. Since the ruckus went down at school, there could be some fallout. As the two speculated about the fate of their classmates, the teacher offered Ji-soon some green tea in the staff room. Though the taste usually didn't sit well with the younger crowd, it served as a great conversation starter. The teacher noted that the vibe at this school was way different from Ji-soon's last one. He mentioned that when Ji-soon's father made the call for him to switch schools, he wasn't on board, worried about how tough it would be for him, especially since Ji-soon didn't talk much. Nevertheless, he felt a wave of gratitude for the faith that had been placed in him. The teacher pressed on, reminiscing that the last time he had laid eyes on Ji-soon was around 4 years back when he was just an elementary school kid. He could clearly recall watching the boy practice with astounding energy and enthusiasm. Back then, Ji-soon's dad had introduced him as a friend, and the kid had greeted him with impeccable manners. The teacher was genuinely impressed that the dad had converted part of their home into a training academy for his son. He remembered celebrating their reunion with a drink after training, and how Ji-soon was a remarkable young man. The teacher admitted he had no clue what had happened in those years for Ji-soon to find himself in such a dreadful situation, but he cautioned that even though he had asked the other teachers to be understanding, Ji-soon would still have to face the students all on his own. He wrapped up by stating that the reason his father had raised him to be so tough was not just about physical training, and that one day he would break through that silence. A sudden downpour unexpectedly caught everyone off guard on their way home. Seung-min mentioned to his classmate that his current worry was Kim Jin-woo, since they had no way to grab Ji-soon's attention. At that moment, the phone he had snagged from Ji-soon buzzed with a message. It was Aryam asking if he had an umbrella. Bewildered, he wondered why she was asking that, and she replied that she was hanging out in front of the stationery store. Seung-min hurried over, already envisioning her with an umbrella, and his suspicions were confirmed when he spotted her waiting for Ji-soon. Overwhelmed with doubt and jealousy, he faltered at the thought of bringing Ji-soon to her, not wanting those two to huddle under an umbrella together. Then a brilliant idea struck him, and in a dash he went to fetch the boy and set his plan in motion. Aryam lingered a bit longer until she heard Seung-min coming along with Ji-soon. Dramatically, Seung-min exclaimed to his friend that he also didn't have an umbrella. Upon seeing Aryam, he feigned ignorance about her presence there. The girl rummaged through her backpack, pulled out a spare umbrella, and offered it to Ji-soon. Seung-min's scheme seemed to be unraveling, but he wasn't about to throw in the towel. Even sensing that her interest was directed towards Ji-soon, he made a move to intercept her. He graciously accepted the umbrella, thanking her softly, and concocted a story that he and Ji-soon had somewhere to hustle off to a brand new gaming center on Main Street. Seizing the moment, he suggested she join them. Meanwhile, Gogumon dashed home, desperately trying to avoid the downpour. As he darted through an alley, two guys blocked his path, Jae-min, whose nose Ji-soon had broken, and the hefty student who had taken a beating in class. Terrified, Gogumon inquired what they wanted. Jae-min shot back that since he claimed to be Ji-soon's agent, they had a message to deliver to. The two attackers launched a beating on the boy, intending to send a clear message to Ji-soon. Jae-min stated they would meet again and insisted that the young boy repeat what he had heard. Struggling to respond, the boy managed to mumble that the message was for Ji-soon to join in. One of the men hit him again, demanding he answer properly. Tearfully, the boy assured them he would talk to Ji-soon. The bully then demanded to know if he was familiar with the term quick access penalty, while making some pretty grim threats. Just then, Kim Jin-woo swooped in, defending the kid and asking the bully to take it down a notch. Jin-woo grabbed one of his business cards and passed it to the boy. He told the young lad to inform Ji-soon that he'd be super welcome to join the combat camp. After that, the trio left, leaving the boy hurt and all alone. Meanwhile, Seung-min was over at the new gaming lounge enjoying some gaming time with our protagonist. Seung-min was all fired up, while the protagonist seemed totally unbothered. Thinking he was a gaming prodigy, Seung-min busted out his best moves to dazzle Aryam. But just when he thought he was invincible, Ji-soon sneaked in a point against him. The boy tried to mask his shock, acting all cool and collected before diving back into the game, now fueled by a fresh determination to win. The protagonist, on the other hand, made it look effortless, scoring another point without breaking a sweat. Shocked by his buddy's skills, Seungmin, now full of bravado, declared he wouldn't go easy from here on out. Still, the game wrapped up with an epic score of 13-0. Jisun didn't even let Seungmin get a single point. Seungmin then invited Aryam to throw down a match, hoping she'd experience Jisun's indifference and find him totally repulsive. They kicked off the match, which featured gentle moves and a nice slow pace until Aryam scored her first point, leaving Seungmin fuming at his friend. The girl, clearly focused, managed to snag another point. Next, they wandered over to the claw machines, where Seungmin was sure his luck would change. However, after many failed attempts, he told Aryam to hang tight, convinced that a bear was just around the corner. He tried again and failed once more, getting annoyed and declaring that the machine was a total scam. Meanwhile, Jisun, totally chill, snagged another bear. With 2 matching bears, though, in different colors, Jisun handed one to each of his friends. Seungmin, feeling a bit sheepish, thanked him while pondering just what Jisun was capable of. Frustrated with how things were going, Seungmin opted to play his trump card. He took his pals to a karaoke bar, confident that his singing chops would shine. He belted out his song as loudly as possible, hoping to catch Aryam's attention, but what came out was more of a comedy act than a serenade. Meanwhile, Aryam clutched the plushies from her crush like a lifeline. At the height of his catastrophic performance, Seungmin choked and rushed off in search of water, leaving Jisun and Aryam in an awkward silence. Aryam pulled out her phone and shot a message to Jisun, thanking him for the bear. Just then, her phone rang. The moment she saw it was her dad calling, she got super anxious. She jumped up and hurried out, but as she dashed through the door, she collided with a guy, sending his coffee flying everywhere. The man yelled at her, scolding her for not paying attention, and got even angrier when she didn't apologize. Seungmin returned and saw the drama unfold, stepping in to help. "Is she your girlfriend?" the man asked, to which the boy replied, "We're just classmates." The guy then decided to pour the leftover coffee right over the girl's head, and of course Seungmin just stood there all jelly and no muscle. But then Jisun swooped in and grabbed the dude's arm. He looked shocked and was all like, "What on earth are you doing?" Our hero tripped the guy up, sending him crashing to the ground like yesterday's trash. The brute's buddy tried to throw a punch at Jisun, but he ended up on the floor too, thanks to a solid hit. Aryam watched the two tumble down like bowling pins. Jisun yanked her arm, pulled her up, and they sprinted away to ditch any more drama. Seungmin hung back, and the guy turned to him, asking if he was one of the friends who took off. The kid bolted away faster than you could say, "Not my problem." He grabbed his backpack and stuffed his teddy bear inside before making a run for it. Once he hit the street, he noticed the two racing down the stairs. He yelled to get their attention, but they totally ignored him. They just kept on trucking. Watching them from a distance, Seungmin was kind of mesmerized by how in sync they were. Jisun had swooped in like a superhero to save Aryam in her time of need, while Seungmin thought of himself as just a pathetic coward. To her, he was just another background character. With his head hung low, he trudged home, bummed out when someone called his name. It was Gogumon, sprawled out in a corner and looking worse for wear. Seungmin walked over and asked what went down. With tears welling in his eyes, Gogumon complained about not being cut out to be Jisun's hype man. Seungmin inquired if Jinwoo's gang had taken him down. Gogumon nodded, saying his nerves had stopped him from keeping the promise to get Jisun in on the dogfight. Seungmin realized Gogumon was just as much of a chicken as he was. They were both living the life of timid losers. He helped the kid up and led him towards home. "So what now?" Gogumon asked. Seungmin replied that if Jisun thought they were friends, he'd step up to help. Meanwhile, the two of them strolled hand in hand until Jisun released Aryam's arm. They fell into step beside each other. She pulled out an umbrella to keep them dry from the pesky rain. Yina, who was nearby, spotted the two walking so closely. She was left speechless. Did something happen? Her friend wondered. She played it cool, saying, "It's nothing," but her friend urged them to hurry along since the others were waiting. Yina continued on her way, but the sight of the two together stuck in her mind like glue. Just then, Aryam's phone buzzed with a bunch of notifications, but she brushed them off and kept going. As she reached her apartment building, she paused and took out her phone. She texted Jisun that this was her place, handed him the umbrella, and said her goodbyes. Then she skipped off like a happy little kid because she had just shared that moment with her crush. As Jisun turned to head out, he felt a tap on his shoulder. Turning around, he saw her phone flashing with a message that read, "Thanks a ton for today," while Aryam stood there smiling, holding the phone. The girl dashed back home, hopped in the elevator, and rode up a few floors, gazing at Jisun as he walked away. But then the sound of a lighter clicking open caught her off guard. Looking aside, she spotted a dude smoking, staring right at her. "What kind of crazy talk is that?" he asked. Aryam stayed quiet, staring at the ground. The following day, back at school, Seungmin scolded Gogumon for snitching on Jisun. The kid felt awful about what went down. "I deserve the worst," he said. Seungmin kept on berating and shaming him, throwing out words meant to reach Jisun's heart. "So when is Jisun supposed to jump into the fray?" he asked the so-called spokesperson. Gogumon let him know it was set for Saturday night at 9 o'clock at the gym. He added that if Jisun didn't show, the gang would take him out. They tried to hammer home just how serious the situation was to Jisun and how much they needed him, but the main dude just walked away. They stood there wondering if he would actually come while Gogumon was on the verge of a meltdown, feeling utterly hopeless. On Saturday night at the fight club, the competitors were locked in a fierce showdown, throwing punches like there was no tomorrow. With each hit, the crowd went wild. Sungmin and Gogumin were shaking in their boots at the chaotic scene inside the school, questioning whether Jisun would actually show up. The crowd was buzzing with excitement over the intensity of the matches taking place. A furious exchange of blows erupted between the two fighters, and every time one gave an opening, the audience erupted, urging the other to take action. Following the crowd's roars, the fighter struck with precision. A man was watching the entire spectacle from a fancy box above. At last, that match wrapped up, and it was time for the main event. The man was eager to see if Jisun would make an appearance, as he viewed him as a quiet, gentle soul, but knew he was capable of throwing down. He contemplated who to place his bets on, Lee Tae-sung or Jisun. Even though he was curious about the transfer student's skills, he figured it was a no-brainer to bet on Tae-sung, who was truly a killer in the ring. Suddenly, the phone rang. When he picked up, he learned from the other end that a student was at the gate, refusing to answer any of their questions. The teacher recognized it was Jisun and simply ordered that he be let in. Looking out the window and seeing the young man arrive, he thought to himself that his bravery was impressive, almost like the bravery of a lamb heading to slaughter. The bout that was happening concluded with Min Chul as the victor. Kim Jin-woo wondered where Jisun was since the main event was drawing near. His goons intimidated the other kids to find out if Jisun was coming, warning that in his absence, the two would face Tae-sung. Just then, the gym door swung open. All heads turned to see who it was, and there he was, Jisun, the transfer student. Everyone was speechless at his appearance, and even his two pals were shocked to see him show up. They rushed over to congratulate the young man for coming to their rescue. Kim Jin-woo remarked that Jisun was right on time, like a ghost, and that he'd been eagerly awaiting his arrival. He claimed that if Jisun won, those who wagered on him would strike it rich, but only 10% of the crowd had put their money on him. He added that he himself had also placed a bet on Jisun. To him, Jisun was a hungry beast ready to hunt. He encouraged the young man to unleash everything he had that day. The two main contenders stood toe-to-toe, staring each other down, trying to read what was behind each other's eyes. The young guy, Tae-sung, popped off his headphones and asked if Jisun was the new kid in school. He tossed his headphones to someone in the crowd and called for them to crank up that song. He ripped off his shirt and shouted, "It's showtime." The two of them got into position, ready to throw down. They started trading punches and Jisun skillfully avoided them all. He landed a hit in return, but his opponent blocked it. They kept pushing each other's skills to the limit. Among all the hits flying around, it was only Tae-sung who was taking the hits. After a few quick exchanges, it hit him out of all the opponents he'd faced. Jisun was on a whole new level. The atmosphere was icy that day, but he refused to let it rattle him. Right after that thought crossed his mind, a punch landed straight on his face. Jisun seized the moment when Tae-sung let his guard down. The fighter didn't ease up, raining down a flurry of punches, leaving his foe no chance to fight back. Jisun's two pals cheered with every hit he landed. Tae-sung was boiling with anger since the kid's face showed no emotion. He was turning into Jisun's personal punching bag. The teacher monitoring through the cameras questioned what was up with the kid he had placed his bets on. The audience started getting restless because Lee Tae-sung wasn't striking back. They called for the music to be turned up, hoping it would pump the boy up. All together, they began shouting the young man's name. The music and the crowd's cheers started to rev him up. Meanwhile, Jisun noticed that voice sounded oddly familiar. This distraction led to him taking his first hits. The crowd perked up, too curious about what the song was. One guy told another it was Ilha Khan, a really popular girl group at that time. Jisun suddenly remembered a girl who had once said that when her group made it big, he'd be dating a pop star. Back in the day, the girl had grilled him about how he felt about that scenario. She confidently told him the producers would see to her debut as long as she stuck to the contract, and she was eager to find out if she could meet that requirement. Meanwhile, his friends invited him out. He reassured her, saying, "No matter what you choose, it will always be the right choice for me." The girl over the moon with his words thanked him, saying, "You're the only one I can rely on, my true safe haven." Suddenly, the audience's cheers yanked him back to the fight. Because of his distraction, he started getting hit left and right. His friends, worried, wondered why he had suddenly slowed down. Tae-sung, for his part, started to underestimate Jisun, thinking his opponent had just been too cautious until now. With that thought, Tae-sung felt totally confident he would win, while the crowd erupted in cheers, chanting his name non-stop. But the music blasting from the speakers caused Jisun to lose control of the fight. He was getting pushed back relentlessly, and his friends were clueless on how to step in. Quickly, they figured that the blaring music might be the distraction and rushed to the source to ask them to turn it down a notch. The boy shot back snippily, "Mind your own beeswax." Sung Min jumped in, saying Jisun's totally distracted because of the loud music. In reply, they laughed at him, saying the quiet guy didn't have it in him to win. At that very moment, Gojamoon snatched the speaker and bolted. Even though they tried to stop him, he managed to silence the music. In the protagonist's head, a parade of past memories began to roll. The girl had dumped him, saying, "I can't be involved in this anymore," she declared. From now on, we're done, claiming she was fed up with all the drama. She turned her back and walked out, leaving him shouting after her. He hollered after her in desperation, until some security guards restrained him and escorted him out. While Jisun got lost in those memories, Tae-sung kept dishing out punches. Victory seemed just around the corner. He only needed a couple more hits to finish Jisun off, and he delivered, landing more blows. Jisun dropped to his knees, still picturing the girl in his mind. Just as Tae-sung prepared for the knockout punch aiming to finish the fight, everyone assumed it was game over. However, feeling the kick coming, Jizoon dodged like a pro. His mind seemed to reboot, and he recharged like a battery, furiously charging at his foe. He delivered a jaw-dropping punch to Taesung's face, sending him sprawling to the ground. You could hear the gasps in the crowd. Jizoon didn't stop there. He followed up with another kick to his opponent's face. Taesung spat blood in confusion, completely thrown off. Kim Jin-woo had already figured out the fight was locked in. Jizoon's fans cheered while the rest of the crowd fell quiet. Taesung was utterly bewildered, having dominated just moments ago. But now he was getting kicked around like a soccer ball. Jizoon had a fierce look in his eyes. Lying on the ground, Taesung begged him to quit it. However, Jizoon turned a deaf ear to the pleas and landed yet another kick on his opponent's face, continuing the relentless assault. Everyone started to wonder what the heck he was doing, worried he might really hurt his opponent if he kept this, yet Jizoon seemed to be in a whirlwind of unbridled rage. Those watching asked Kim Jin-woo if Jizoon was going to end up seriously injuring his opponent with that intensity. Instead of being worried, he looked overjoyed at Jizoon's bloodthirsty streak. He reveled in the thought of having a box office hit on his hands, pondering who the next opponent could be for an even wilder showdown. His friends jumped in to stop the fight, saying he had already won. Taesung's professor was fuming at the sight of his favorite losing. Regardless, for Kim Jin-woo, what mattered most was who lined his pockets, and he was sure Jizoon could be his golden ticket. Kim Jin-woo just needed to train him to be his faithful sidekick. He'd be the one to mold the young fighter. Jizoon snapped back to reality, but his opponent was already nearly out cold on the floor. Kim Jin-woo congratulated him on his victory, saying his instincts had proven right. He instructed the kid to keep that wild look for the next match too. The fight earnings would flow through his agent. After that, Kim Jin-woo took off and the two boys trailed behind him. Wanting to be neighborly, they invited him to join in the celebration of their victory. However, Jizoon just swatted Gogumun's hand away like a pesky fly, leaving the boys scratching their heads in confusion. A little farther down the road, he passed by a store and heard a familiar tune. Looking up, he spotted Lee Khan's show on the screen. The interviewer tossed her a question about whether she knew just how popular she was right now. She responded that she felt grateful for her fans' support even during her less-than-stellar moments, and she expressed her thanks. Sung Min and Gogumun, still shadowing the boy, grew curious about why he had stopped to catch the Illikan report. They suddenly recalled that Jizoon had been acting a bit odd ever since he first heard her music. They concluded he must be one of those who just can't stand her, which made it hard to believe anyone could dislike the singer. Sung Min was flabbergasted to learn that Gogumun was actually a fan of the singer. He mocked him, saying he expected nothing less from him. Nevertheless, he also confessed that he too actually liked the band. A while later, Jizoon showed up at the beach and the two boys kept tailing him there. The main character plopped down on a bench, staring out at the sea like it held all the secrets of the universe. Sung Min asked Gogumun if they shouldn't go chat with Jizoon, but Gogumun insisted it wasn't the right move. Sung Min persisted, arguing that if they were friends, they ought to help him out. Gogumun mentioned he had someone in mind who could lift Jizoon's spirits, and found himself deep in thought about whether to go through with it. Meanwhile, Aryam was already snoozing away when her phone buzzed to life. She stirred awake and saw Jizoon's message inviting her to meet him at the beach near the lighthouse. The girl got dressed in a hurry, trying to sneak out. She tiptoed past her dad, who was passed out at the table after having won too many. Suddenly, he started mumbling and swearing into the air, which freaked her out a bit, but it turned out to just be a dream, and soon enough, he was snoring again. She successfully escaped the house to meet up with her crush. On the beach, Gogumun asked who Sung Min had been texting to, which the latter replied, "Oh, just a girl." Gogumun was shocked to discover that Sung Min was actually sending messages to girls. Sung Min clarified that, truth be told, Aryam didn't know it was him sending the texts. The phone was the one she had given to Jizoon to keep in touch. But then he had picked up the phone and pretended to be Jizoon while replying to a few messages. Deep down, he knew he should give the phone back, but he just couldn't bring himself to do it. Gogumun placed a hand on Sung Min's shoulder and asked if he liked her. Sung Min admitted he used to have a crush on her, but now he understood his place. Gogumun gave him a playful shove and urged him to return the phone pronto. Sung Min approached Jaeson, who was still hanging out on the bench, and handed him the phone. He apologized and confessed that he might have impersonated him for a bit. He also admitted he sent one last message and urged Jaeson not to shut down Aryam. As he strolled away, he remarked that the two made quite the stunning pair. When he checked his phone, Jaeson noticed a text from the girl letting him know she was nearly there. For the first time, a case of nerves hit him about the whole deal. Just then, Aryam came running to meet her sweetheart. The moment she showed up, Gogumun, who had been lurking nearby, was mesmerized by her beauty. While Gogumun thought they were a perfect match, Sung Min sulked over losing the girl of his dreams. Gogumun mentioned it was getting late and they should head out. He invited Sung Min over to his place for some video game action. The two of them took off, leaving the lovebirds to enjoy their moment. The place was quiet except for the soothing sound of the waves. Aryam sent a message, thrilled to receive it, and waited eagerly for the boy to reply. Jaeson texted back saying he was thinking about her. She tried to chat about the ocean waves, but all he sent back was an emoji. The girl asked if he came there often, and he replied it was his first time. Jaeson asked what time she usually hit the hay. Aryam answered that she turned in at 10 o'clock and was actually already asleep when she saw his message. He got up, offering to walk her home, but she grabbed his arm and said she didn't want to go back just yet. He didn't push back or argue. He simply went along with her wish. He headed to the vending machine to grab a drink for both of them. She expressed her gratitude for his sweet gesture. Then he curiously asked why she was hesitant to leave. The girl spilled that her home felt like a cave. She mentioned that she was surprised to receive his text that day, remembering that the last time he only said goodnight. That previous message had caught her off guard too, as it came out of nowhere. Jason double-checked his phone, confirming the goodnight text from the night before. But it turned out Kyung-min was the one who sent it a detail. Jason decided to keep to himself. The girl continued explaining that she had been having a really tough day. The message sounded like a little nudge, telling her to hang in there, and she felt genuinely thankful at that moment. Then she decided to inquire why he was so quiet. He started to think deeply lost in his memories. His ex-girlfriend appeared to have moved on without him. As security guards blocked his way and threatened to arrest him, the girl dashed back and hugged him tightly. She admitted that she'd rehearsed the breakup so many times to stay as cool as a cucumber, but seeing him now, it was impossible. She vowed she wouldn't abandon him even if it cost her dearly, and asked Jason what she should do. He reassured her that no matter what happened, he'd always stand by her, telling her not to cry because everything would turn out okay. Up on the rooftop, Go Bong-sun, the big boss of Bong-sun Entertainment, watched the two intently. Snapping back to reality, he responded to Ariam, stating that words could reach deep into the soul and freeze everything in place. She, lost in thought, found that quite philosophical. She noted that she had no clue what his deal was, but figured his reasoning was way more complicated than hers. The boy inquired about her hesitation to chat. Calmly, she responded that it was straightforward. Her language was just as colorful as her father's. She realized that her dad's way of talking was part of her, and admitted it was a pretty dumb reason. Jason invited her for a stroll along the beach. As expected, on a Saturday night the place was buzzing with activity. As they passed by a bar, a ruckus erupted inside. A bunch of people started picking on a younger guy, giving him a hard time for drinking there. The boy shot back that he could drink since he looked older than he actually was. The young man's cockiness was irking everyone. It was Kang Do-il, the gang leader, looking to recruit Jason, just wanting to enjoy a drink in peace. One of the hecklers asked about Do-il's crew and where they were. The boy snapped back that he liked to let the kids chill during break, and it was simpler that way. The guy told him to scram, warning that if he didn't, there'd be consequences. Smirking, Do-il asked if the seniors from Daseo High had picked on him to spark such rage. They called him petty for being stuck in his old school ways. One of them knocked everything off the table, clearly looking to throw down. Kang Do-il stood up, kicked the table to the ground, and proclaimed that he had never been scared of a good beating. Everyone inside and out on the street sensed a brawl was about to kick off. The 1-on-4 showdown began. Kang Do-il seemed to be playing a fighting game with kids, until in the midst of his moves, his eyes locked onto Jason's blue hair. He grinned and exclaimed, "What a pleasure to see you here. I'm thrilled to see my bud." The guy mentioned he was about to pay him a visit, but fate decided they should meet right then and there. He wrapped his arms around Jason, who was utterly lost, claiming it was all destiny. However, the fighters from the bar stormed out, questioning if Jason was part of Do-il's gang. The guy shot back, asking if they couldn't see the bond just by looking, asserting that he and Jason were pals. But the thugs didn't give a hoot about this so-called friendship. Instantly, Jason positioned Arion behind him to shield her. The group lunged at them with malice, shouting that they were going to wipe out those punks. While the gang leader took on one of the attackers, another came at Jason, insisting that if they were friends, they both deserved a beating. With stunning ease, the protagonist knocked the bully out cold. They began working together against the gang, giving each other heads up when someone was about to sneak up, taking everyone down in mere moments. Watching the scene unfold, Arion thought that Jason seemed to be at the peak of a tall, unreachable wall. However, she noticed that sometimes the boy would come down from that wall to lend a hand. He might seem icy, but underneath he wasn't. While everyone fought for their own selfish reasons, Jason was far above all that. He was fighting for something way bigger than just his own ego. Out of nowhere, one of the guys whipped out a knife and crept up behind the kid. The dude got close enough to make a move without the boy even knowing it. The girl screamed like she was on a roller coaster trying to alert him, and his fighting buddy shouted for him to duck. Jason jumped into action, sidestepping the attack like a pro. Right then, the gang leader swooped in with a flying kick that landed right on the bad guy's face, letting him have it for even thinking he could bring a knife to a 2-on-1 fight. He said only the clueless resorted to weapons when they were in a bind. They both took down anyone who dared to stand in their way. The guy turned to Jason and asked if he didn't think they were a dynamic duo since they had just wiped the floor with everyone. But Jason, seeing Arion's tear-filled eyes, was not on board. The guy teased him about being scared, claiming it was nothing to fret over. In response, the protagonist threw a punch that made contact with his face. Confused, the guy wanted to know what in the world was going on. Without a moment's hesitation, Jason slugged him in the gut again, sending him crashing down. Lying on the ground, the guy admitted he had orchestrated the whole thing just to see Jason unleash his true fighting skills. When Jason warned him that it was about to get serious, the boy threw his hands up, claiming he didn't want to tussle anymore, since now they were on the same team. He apologized for the way things went down, saying it was just a little test and that Jason aced it with flying colors. Then he asked Jason to be his pal and join his crew. Jason, however, just turned on his heel and walked off with Arion. The other guy trailed after them, remarking that the two seemed a bit too cozy for a late-night stroll. He felt pretty pleased with himself, thinking he had a hand in today's shenanigans. Since he owed Jason one for the help, he decided to show them a spot to chill instead of wandering around aimlessly. The pair were hesitant, but eventually went along. The guy led them to a comic book library. He woke up the attendant, who was snoozing like he was in a time warp to help out his fresh customers. He mentioned having never seen their faces before, and Doyle chimed in that these were his new pals. The attendant noted that his taste in friends had changed since these two were rather easy on the eye. He told them to pick any seat they liked and offered them some extra reading time on the house. While Doyle was signing them in the scene, cut over to Arian's house. Her dad woke up groggy from sleeping like a log. Getting up, he noticed the door was ajar. He headed to his daughter's room only to discover she was missing. He began searching the house like a frantic detective, growing more and more panicked when he couldn't find her anywhere. Doyle spilled the beans about this being his secret lair, a spot he liked to escape to whenever. He could give them 2 special passes since he typically didn't let anyone crash here. He asked if that made them even suggesting they just kick back and dive into a manhwa. With that, he waved goodbye, announcing he was off for a nap, flopped down in a corner, and was out like a light. In the quiet, Jijon grabbed his phone and texted Arian asking if she was scared. She replied no, claiming she was feeling chill now. Then she asked if he wanted to read a manhwa. He was all in, and together they picked a story to read. After flipping through a few pages and feeling a tad bit bashful, the girl and Jijon settled into a peaceful reading session that seemed to stretch on forever. That is until the library worker sauntered over offering them complimentary drink. He remarked in disbelief that Doyle hung out with friends like them, noting that Doyle typically had no true pals, only a bunch of kids always looking for a fight. While passing the drinks, they spotted that the attendant was missing 2 fingers on his hand. Catching their astonished expressions, he shrugged it off, saying he had gotten used to it and it didn't faze him anymore. But boy, it was rough at the start. He mentioned that Doyle still couldn't come to terms with growing up, and pointed out that Doyle, once just a regular kid, had taken a wrong turn after that one incident. Apologizing for chatting them up on their first visit, he asked them to look out for Doyle, claiming he was a solid kid. Time flew by, and the girl dozed off against his shoulder, snoozing soundly until her phone erupted in a cacophony. Jerked awake by the racket, she blushed, realizing she had been leaning on Jijon. Glancing at her phone, she noticed 3 missed calls. She texted Jijon, stating her dad was calling, and it was time for her to bounce. Jijon offered to walk her home. They strolled towards her pad, basking in the glow of the lovely night. Arriving at her building, they hopped into the elevator, heading straight to her apartment door. She expressed gratitude for the carefree hours spent in his company. Jijon felt slightly puzzled by her words as she walked toward the apartment. As soon as she punched in the code to unlock the door, her father swung it open, fuming. He bellowed, demanding to know the hour and how many times he had dialed her, declaring she must have lost her marbles to behave like this. Spotting the look on her face only fueled his anger. He backhanded her and cursed for giving him that look, insisting she was the one in the wrong. With her sprawled on the floor, he asked if she didn't respect her own father. Yanking her inside, he grilled her about how dare she go out without a heads up and what she was up to so late. His voice rose louder with each question, and witnessing the scene, Jijon felt a surge of rage stepping toward them. When her dad spotted Jijon, he was convinced the boy was the reason for his daughter being out at this hour and promised he wouldn't let him leave. The girl clung to her father's clothing with both hands. Her dad screamed, demanding she let go while she tearfully pleaded with Jijon to take off. She yelled, taking another hit to the face. The man threatened to end that boy's life right there. The girl fought against her father's blows, gripping him tight and begging Jijon to leave. She yelled for him to just get out. Jijon then took her advice and bolted. As the protagonist reflected, he realized he had learned to run in the past after moving to this city and had also failed to confront such situations before. While Jijon made his escape, her father continued to lose it, demanding she let him go. But Jijon seized the moment and dashed off. Running from what he couldn't face was just in his nature. He had a knack for bolting whenever he encountered something too scary to deal with. He shut his eyes as if pretending the world had hit the pause button, desperately trying to blend in with the hush and shadows. He strolled away from the girl's place totally wiped out and shaken to the core. Eventually, he made it back home. An elderly man knelt in front of the Buddha, engrossed in his prayers. Jijon squatted at the doorstep and the old man remarked, "You're running behind today." He noted that it was the first time Jijon was so tardy and figured he had a lot on his mind. The neighborhood where Jijon sought refuge was the calmest spot around. Still, as time rolled on, he found himself making new pals, and now he had to make a decision before things got all tangled up. The big question was, would he take the plunge or pull a runner again? Days rolled by since that incident, while the melee at school continued. The fight club was a total bloodbath. The winners only halted the punches when the loser pleaded for mercy, and the bullies strutted around bragging about taking down weaker kids. When Jinwoo saw the kid give up, he stormed over to grill him on why he quit. "You just got started and already you're throwing in the towel," he asked. The boy answered that he hardly stood a chance and saw no point in dragging it out, knowing he'd end up defeated. In response, Kim Jinwoo walloped him in the face. "If you're in the ring, that kind of mindset is a no-go," he declared. "People like you shouldn't even carry the title of fighter. Don't even think about looking at me again." One of the goons piped up that Professor Kim wanted to see him in the warehouse. Inside the warehouse, the professor told him they were in need of real fighters, not fragile souls, and everyone was buzzing for Jijon's upcoming match. Kim Jinwoo mentioned he was scouting for fighters, but most were as weak as a soggy noodle, while others were too scared to get a bruise. The professor challenged him, asking if he implied he couldn't find anyone. With a shaky voice, he clarified he didn't mean that, just that it might take a little while. When asked how long it would take, the boy requested a month from the professor. The older man retorted that he transformed the poor soul, who once wandered with fake sneakers, into someone who could strut in fancy attire, and now he looked pretty self-assured, but added that clients aren't keen on waiting an entire month. He pointed out there were other betting shops for the boy to get his thrill fix, suggesting that if he couldn't manage that he could bow out of the whole hound dog circus. The boy dropped to his knees, pleading he didn't want that and vowed he'd give it his all. The professor stepped on the boy's head and stated, "You have 1 week to find a rival. If not, you'll have to take responsibility and fight yourself." Kim Jin-woo against Jijon would make for a compelling bout. That way he could seize the chance to flaunt his fighting chops again, and the clients would be all over it. The professor took off, reminding him about the 1-week countdown. He felt furious at the thought of squaring off against Jijon. He now had to hunt for an opponent to battle. Meanwhile, the 3 amigos were chilling on the rooftop sharing lunch. Gogumon declared he scored a donkatsu bento, adding that it's not a wise idea to munch on bread every single day. The 2 guys were adamant that Jijon eat up since he looked like a toothpick. Lunchtime had turned into a tradition for them since the place was just so darn cozy. As soon as Jijon's phone buzzed, Seong-min jumped in and asked if it was Ariam. Nervously, he inquired if the 2 were hitting it off and urged Jijon to check his phone. The main character hopped up to check the message away from their prying eyes. While the other kid was itching to see the message, Gogumon smacked him on the head and told him to mind his own beeswax. Ariam wanted to know if he'd like to catch up with her at the comic book shop later. Hours flew by and the pair made their way to the comic book store. They sat in silence for a bit, just being in each other's company. Summoning her bravery, she said, "It'd be weird if I didn't say anything now after that loud scream episode. I really can't stand my own voice. I picked up this weird way of talking from my dad since I was little. I wish I could just ditch my voice altogether, but I don't regret it since I didn't want you to get hurt." Ariam shared that her mom put up with her dad's antics until one day she finally snapped and left. From that moment on, it was just her and her dad at the house, which made her talk less and less until she just stopped. Naturally, the few friends she had eventually drifted away. Then Doyle strolled into the comic. The clerk let him know that his buddies were also there. Ariam kept pouring out her heart to Jijon, saying she had always felt lonely until she caught wind of him, the new transfer student, who hardly spoke. That's why she was curious if his story mirrored hers. Doyle showed up and was blown away to see her chatting and asked, "What brought you out of your shell?" A bit flustered, she admitted she had no choice but to stay quiet in a tough situation. He then wanted the scoop on what that situation was. Grinning, he added, "No matter the situation, I'm just glad you're talking more freely now." He congratulated her for finding her voice again. The silence crept back in until Doyle brought up Jijon, but he quickly waved it off, suggesting, "Since we're all here, why don't we grab a bite together?" He even invited the clerk along, reasoning that there were no customers. All they had to do was lower the blinds and head out. As they headed for dinner, Kim Jin-woo was practically fuming, obsessed with the idea of fighting Jijon. The bigger guy grumbled. "A week to prepare for this is downright harsh," Kim fired back. "Don't you know any bullies to do the fighting?" "I don't know anyone, and it'd be embarrassing to lose to a transfer student," the bulky friend added. "But I do know one dude. He's a dropout turned gangster. Anyone who crosses him is really asking for trouble." He cautioned. "Isn't involving a real gangster a bit much for this?" The other guy asked. "Who are you even talking about?" Kim Jin-woo recounted that somewhere in the city a guy was getting hassled by a loan shark because of a 2-month. The sneaky act of hiding without a heads up was seen as a clever way to dodge them. The guy, all teary-eyed, insisted he was working on clearing the debt. With scissors brandished like a weapon, the loan shark questioned his honesty. "Are you really trying to pay off that debt? We found you hanging out in a casino and dragged you here." The desperate guy shouted, "I was at the casino chasing some cash, and with just one lucky strike I could wipe out the whole debt. I had a vision of my ancestors and I feel like something monumental is about to hit my life," he declared. The loan shark clutched the debtor's hand and squeezed his finger with those scissors. Scared out of his wits, the guy pleaded for extra time to settle the loan. The loan shark shot back that even when the debtor was working, he hadn't cleared his debts and now wanted to gamble his way out. He asked, "Do any of you look like clueless fools to me?" The henchman gripping the guy's hand warned that it would sting a tad, but he reassured him he was a pro at this, promising a clean and precise cut. The man pleaded for mercy, but no ears were bending his way, and one of his fingers was snipped off. The henchman later declared that what was happening right now was crucial. The guy had 1 hour to scrounge up the cash. After that, they'd return the finger so it could be stitched back on. He commanded the guy to bolt, and through tears he did as told. The boss asked his henchman if he was thrilled to add another finger to his bizarre collection. The henchman replied that he wasn't keen on those worn-out fingers, but confessed it had been ages since he felt this kind of excitement. This was the dude the burly pal had in mind for the brawl. Jong Gitae Sunbai, the same guy who had sliced off a student's finger who played guitar in the school band. His friend remarked that this guy was already a little too unhinged. He added that after the whole finger incident, he spent time in a juvenile facility and turned into a gangster upon his release. Kim Jin-woo, with a grin, asked if there was any chance to meet this guy. Even the burly friend who suggested it was taken aback at the idea of actually reaching out to him. The other kid was buzzing with excitement over the potential showdown between the now gangster Sunbai and the unbeatable transfer student. He said they weren't in a position to be choosy about whether he was a gangster or a killer. They simply needed to get a move on. While plotting this epic brawl, the 4 buds decided to grab a bite somewhere. Young grumbled that he wasn't a fan of going out, and Doyle shot back, "You can't just rot away in the manhwa shop every day." Doyle recalled that at some point, Jung had been on a stage. The boy replied, "It feels like an eon ago." Ariam chimed in, "It was just a passing phase." Doyle then asked, "Are you in a band since you're such an awesome guitarist?" He swiftly changed topics, asking, "Would you rather have street food or Chinese?" A car rolled by and spotted the 4 amigos strutting down the street. Inside that ride were the loan shark and his henchmen. The loan shark decided to take a little break because he had some buddies he wanted to say hi to nearby. He hopped out of the car, assuring everyone he would be back in a jiffy. Then he started hollering for Jung. As he got closer, he exclaimed, "When I first saw you, I wasn't sure, but now there's no doubt it's you." While the man reminisced about the past, the boy noticed him and panicked, backing away until he collided with Doyle, who was trying to figure out what was going on. The gangster teased, "Have you seen a ghost or something? You look terrified." The man sauntered over to the two youths and remarked, "You two seem pretty tight. It's lovely to see." Suddenly, he inquired, "What's with the frozen faces? I'm super glad to see you." He continued, reminding them how long it's been since they last met, and pressed, "Aren't you going to welcome me?" "Sorry, Gita Sunbei," one of the young men said apologetically, explaining they were just about to grab a bite. He added in a flat tone, "If this chat goes on much longer, we'll lose our appetite." Gita paused for a second, keeping quiet. With a grin, he pulled out his wallet and offered to cover their meal, saying it's been too long. He then stuffed some cash into the young man's pocket, saying, "Make sure to get some meat, students are usually broke." Turning to Byung-gu, the other young man, Gita noted, "Our paths cross way too often," while taking something out of his pocket. Gita announced, "I sprinted all the way here to give you this." He then revealed, "I picked this up today and trust me, you really needed it." In the background, the other two young men reacted, pulling away. Byung-gu managed to wriggle free from his grasp. Gita, presenting the item as a gift, urged him to take it to the hospital and talk to the medical team. He added that they should request the finger to be reattached so he could strum the guitar. He animatedly insisted that the young man declare this was his dream. The other friends watched the whole scene unfold. The blue-haired young man averted his gaze, turning his face to the side. The scene shifted, showing him with his back to everyone that night. Someone called out to him, saying the name Jijon. Naturally, the man asked if he was settling into the neighborhood, noting that it seemed not quite yet. He then reminded him to appreciate those who come his way, as finding friends isn't a walk in the park. He continued by saying that these folks had braved the enormous wall of his silence and promised they would become important characters in his story. That night, the young man's expression shifted. Back in the moment, he seized Gitae's wrist. Gitae spun around to face him. The young man, unwavering, held his stare. Gitae coldly asked, "Who's the clueless idiot who can't read the room?" Without wasting a second, Jiban lunged for Gitae, who promptly grabbed the young man's wrist and challenged his nerve for being so bold. Maintaining hold of the young man's hand, Gitae quipped that at least his fingers were nice, but warned him flatly. He said that if he butted in again, he might end up losing his own fingers. Releasing the young man's hand, he asked if that was clear. The young man took a step back, backing away, while Gitae insulted him with a sharp, "You little punk." He wonders if the kid's itching for a fight, labeling him an arrogant jerk. In the background, a car honks, prompting him to glance at the street for a moment. Turning to Byung-gu, who sprawled on the ground, he asks what it's like to live without dreams. With a sarcastic chuckle, Gitae addresses the group and wishes them a delightful meal, casually strolling down the street. On his knees, Byung-gu collapses to the floor. His friend rushes over, shouting, "Byung-gu Hyung." Lying on the ground, Byung-gu checks in to see if everyone else is alright as the group closes in on him. As he gets up, he reassures them that it's all behind him, claiming he's alright now. Byung-gu suggests they head back, noting they can always grab a meal another day. The kid with the lip ring calls out Byung-gu Hyung. Up on the rooftop, Kang Doyle beats himself up for freezing in the moment. In a desperate shout, he laments his inability to act. In the end, nothing changed. Curious, the girl inquires about who that guy is. The young man replies plainly, "It's Jong Gitae, the one who chopped off Byung-gu Hyung's finger while he strummed his guitar." Jiban adds that he did it to shatter his buddy's dream. It all unraveled because Byung-gu was just trying to put a stop to that creep's gang antics. The scene shifts back in time, revealing a music room. At that moment, Gitae was menacing a girl with a knife, telling her to hush up before he took her out. Snatching him from behind, Byung-gu yells for Jong Gitae to knock it off. Gitae fights to break free, ignoring Byung-gu's desperate cry. Then Gitae goes on the offensive with the knife. Byung-gu raises his hands to shield his face, trying to deflect the strike. Gitae spins around and glaring questions why on earth he even bothered to meddle. Shouting non-stop, he demands to know why the other guy can't just mind his own business. Then he warns him not to get cocky just because he plays the guitar, staring him down. Byung-gu asserts that Jong Gitae doesn't belong in that space. He elaborates that it's a place where dreams thrive, and that Gitae is a destroyer of them. He points out that someone who stomps on others to satisfy his own selfish whims doesn't deserve a dream. Confused and ticked off, Gitae retorts with what kind of nonsense he's spewing. Brandishing the knife, he vehemently rejects the idea of dream. Yelling at the students gathered at the door, he barks, questioning what they're staring at. Unrelenting in his shouting, Gitae tells them to scram. Threatening everyone, he proclaims he'll slice them into bits. Fuming for them to clear out, he shoves through the crowd and stomps down the hallway. As they run toward Byung-gu, the students assist him while one calls out to summon a teacher. Back in the present, Jiban recounts that after that day, he never went back to school, thinking that would be the end of it. But he reveals that something even worse happened 2 weeks later, when a blood-curdling scream echoed from the band room. Back in the day, Byung-gu freezes in the hallway at the sound of a voice. He opens the door and hears Jiban calling out his name. With pliers in his grasp, Gitae insists he should keep up his air of superiority. As Byung-gu steps into the room, he hears Gitae command him to step forward and witness the truth behind a dream. Gitae starts to rant about a life that's completely dreamless. In a flashback, Jiban admits he froze like a popsicle upon seeing that moment replay. Sitting atop the other boy, Gitae turns and asks Doyle when he decided to drop by. As he stands up, he comments that he's feeling quite refreshed now. He warns Jijon that if he spills the beans about what he saw, he'll be facing the same consequence. Gitae slides his hand across the boy's face and gives him a gentle caress. He says his goodbyes and walks out, leaving Jijon all by himself. Stuck like glue, the young man remains frozen in place. Coming back to the present, Jijon explains that Jong Gitae dropped out of school after that whole ordeal. He continues, revealing that the other boy ended up at a reformatory and became a real-life gangster. With a heavy heart, Jijon confirms that he's now knee-deep in sketchy loan sharking for a crime syndicate. He adds that the reason he's ended up this way is all thanks to Jong Gitae. With fervor, Jijon vows to himself that someone who wrecks another's dream can't be allowed to roam free. On his knees, he cries out that he wanted to become stronger to give the other guy a taste of the pain Byung-gu felt, but here he is frozen again. Sighing softly, he admits he thought he was stronger, but in the end, nothing really changed. The girl asks if that's why he sought out Jijon. Jijon nods and explains that his opponent is a gangster, which is why he thought about gathering up some support. He states that his mission is to take him down hard and make that jerk pay for what he did. Firmly, Jijon declares that's exactly why he needed Jijon. In silence, he stands still for a moment. Later on, he strolls down the street alongside the girl. She remarks that she gets the situation but warns him that they're dealing with a gangster here. Then she asks if taking revenge on him might not be a dangerous game. A certain part of Doyle's tale hit him hard. The thought that someone who crushes another's dream shouldn't be left unchecked. Walking steadily without glancing away, Jijon concludes that this isn't about personal revenge, it's about justice. At another time, a girl reminds Yena that her birthday is right around the corner, and a classmate asks if she remembered the date. Yena's classmate follows up by asking if she's going to throw a party and where it'll be. She then inquires if Yena plans to invite Jijon. Wondering quietly, Yena thinks about whether he might feel awkward, but her friend reassures her that he wouldn't forget about her birthday. The friend then points out the window, showing that Jijon is outside. Out in the courtyard, he's walking with Orium. One of the girls asks if that's Han Orium from next door, the quiet one. Two other boys stroll over and greet them with a cheerful good morning. Feeling a bit miffed, Yena questions why Orium is getting all the attention. Turning away, she questions why she should give a hoot about it. Later on, a bunch of boys asks Jijon to snag them some school lunch since the bread isn't cutting it. Orium pops up at the door, and one of them wonders why she's even there. With a bag in hand, she boldly declares her desire to join them for lunch. Jijon raises an eyebrow at her. One of the boys enthusiastically responds, of course she can join. Then he stares at her puzzled, asking if she just spoke and what's the story there. Before long, the boys are gushing over the packed lunch, asking if she whipped it up herself. Orium offers them a taste and they eagerly dig in. From a distance, Yena keeps a watchful eye on the trio. Meanwhile, Gita is on a call with a woman confirming a deadline and reminding her to transfer the cash. After she mentions her husband is coming back, he hangs up, cutting the conversation short. As he approaches a door, he continues on his path. Gita spots a business card stuck to the door and snatches it up. Entering the place, he announces his arrival to his boss. While three young guys watch him, they comment on his strength and how he picked up the card like it was nothing. One of them asks if recruiting a gangster is such a smart move. Another jumps in saying there's no reason to be scared. They're like a cancer to society, just trash. Turning slowly, a man asks, what did you just say? He echoes the line about cancer and trash. Kim Jin-woo spins around, having caught the remark. The head honcho of the room looks bewildered and wants to know who those boys are. One of his guys clarifies they were talking about gangsters. The man, surprised, questions the use of that term, asking if the boys are talking about. In a defensive tone, one of the young guys insists they're just small business owners who pay taxes like good citizens. The boss then asks what about them made them look like gangsters. Hesitantly, the young man freezes up, unable to come up with a reply. Yet, in his mind, he believes it's pretty clear they look like gangsters. Approaching, the man asks, why so quiet? Did you come here to ask for a loan? The young guy recoils quickly, denying. Gitae, holding up a business card, asks, does this belong to you? The young man nods, saying they came specifically to hand him the card. Gitae, examining the card, probes what Hound Dog is all about. The boss interrupts, saying he's heard that name before. Another guy in the room chimes in that it's Duck's business. The boss then confirms that Duck's business is all about gambling. He elaborates that it's where folks wager on fights, and the young guy agrees. He then realizes they recruit talented individuals who can make them some bucks. Kim starts to wonder if the folks behind Hound Dog are indeed gangsters. Suddenly, it hits him that he's gotten mixed up in a business run by gangsters. Meanwhile, Doyle bumps into Gibbon and asks if he knows how to ride a motorcycle. What's up with that? Gibbon wants to know. Doyle replies that he owns one and needs Gibbon to take it for a spin. Ariam questions why Gibbon needs to do the driving. Calmly explaining, Doyle mentions he twisted his ankle during gym class earlier. Tossing a helmet to Gibbon, he asks for a lift. So where are we off to? The girl inquired. Doyle assured her it wasn't too far and he would guide her through it. Glancing her way, he reassured her not to fret. He'd have her boyfriend back in no time. No, that's not true, Ariam quickly rejected, claiming they were just pals. Quietly, Gibbon held onto the helmet. In a casual tone, Doyle told Byung-gu he was stepping out for a breath of fresh air. With that, the duo exited together. Pointing at the motorcycle, Doyle asked, can I take one for a spin? Gibbon popped a wheelie and Doyle couldn't help but wonder if he could pull that off too. As they zipped through the city, Doyle remarked that this young guy was already stirring up quite the ruckus. Urgently, Doyle warned Gibbon to watch himself around the upcoming sharp turn and to ease up the throttle. With flawless execution, Gibbon tackled the turn, and Doyle asked if he had used countersteering. Bewildered, he exclaimed, "Who even are you, Gibbon?" When they finally arrived at their destination, Doyle asked Gibbon to drop him off here. Gibbon just stared at the sign outside. Crouching down, Doyle grabbed a chunk of brick from the ground. Holding it up to his ear like a phone, he pretended to take a call. "Sincerely," Doyle said, "if Gibbon wasn't driving, I would have totally chickened out and turned around like last time." He added, "This is my chance to stop holding back." Gibbon understood that this felt like a declaration of war. Doyle continued, "That jerk made Byung-gu wet himself, and a guy who used to be a band leader peed right in the street." He turned to Gibbon and asked, "Am I just supposed to let that slide? I've got to at least do this." With a tense look on his face, he awaited Gibbon's reply. Back at the office, their boss piped up, "This isn't a playground for kids like you." Kim explained he showed up after hearing some buzz and recognized him as his senior Jong Gitae. He added that Gitae was the one who dropped out and turned into a gangster. The young lad elaborated that they were gearing up for the big fight and sought him out because they thought he was the right guy for the job. Gitae asked, "So you want me to join in on a kid's brawl?" The young man insisted. The opponent is no joke and shouldn't be underestimated. Gitae's interest piqued. The thought of facing someone worthy as an opponent ignited a spark. The young guy offered his phone, saying it was footage of a transfer student who was super tough to deal with. Just hearing transfer student completely grabbed Gitae's attention. He then introduced the young man as Jijon, showing a clip of him landing a hit on an opponent. The video continued showcasing him in a previous fight. It wrapped up with a close-up shot of Jibon's face. Gitae looked at the video, recognizing the kid. He remembered the one who was hanging out with Doyle, the one with the fancy fingers. Back in the present, Gitae's boss warned him, "Stay out of this. It's just a scrap between students." Gitae nodded, agreeing with his senior's take. Suddenly, a brick hurtled through the window, narrowly missing his face. A shard of glass struck him, leaving a little cut on his cheek. Spinning around in anger, he shouted, "Who on earth did that?" Sprinting to the window, their boss yelled, "Do you all want to meet your end?" The duo peered out at the street and spotted a motorcycle zipping away. Gitae, peering through the shattered window, tracked its trajectory. The motorcycle kept picking up speed down the street. The boss asked Gitae if he was okay, but he stayed mum. As he zipped along on the motorcycle, Gibbon mused that it might have been a foolish taunt, but he couldn't deny the guts it took to pull that off. Doyle's shaky hand gripped his shoulder like a vice. Sensing the fear, he felt as if a gigantic, unyielding mountain was pressing down on them, and boy did he know that feeling as they rocketed down the road. After Gitae signed on for Hound Dog, the students expressed their gratitude and swore they'd give it their all in preparation. But Gitae had some conditions of his own. He'd choose the time and place, and they'd better bring their top fighter. One guy suggested the school gym as the initial fight location, but Gitae shot him down, asking, "What do you think I am, some schoolyard brawl?" The guy quickly nodded in agreement, realizing Gitae was not one to mess with, and that the location was definitely changing. Next, Gitae inquired, "You know a certain Kang Doyle, right?" The student, recognizing the name, replied, "Yeah, he's one of the thugs from Dasan Industrial High, and he's just a freshman." Gitae pondered thoughtfully if that punk had really bulked up since then. The young man added that he'd heard Kang Doyle was spreading his influence around and asked, "What sparked your sudden interest, Gitae?" With a fierce look, Gitae instructed them to track down the punk's location, declaring that the kid had a score to settle. Meanwhile, Jabon was busy sweeping the temple yard. He paused momentarily to greet his master. The master, accepting the greeting, welcomed the visitors, asking, "Here for prayers?" Sungmin replied, "Yes," and went on to explain, "My mom mentioned it was the start of the month and it's been too long since we last came. She told me to pray at the temple." "Absolutely, that's a fantastic plan," the master said. Surprised, Sangmin asked about Jebon, wondering, "Are you living here?" Sitting down, Sungmin remarked, "I thought Jebon stayed in the dormitory. I used to come to this temple as a kid." On the phone, Sangmin told a friend, "Jebon lives at Suboham Temple. Come on over," the friend replied. "I'm on my way." Then he added, "Please grab some yummy snacks on your way, will ya?" A man charged up the temple steps, calling out Jebon. Sungmin greeted him, and Jebon turned to see who arrived. Right behind this guy was Ariam. The young man explained to Jebon, "I sent Ariam a message inviting her too." Ariam nodded slightly as Sangmin asked, "You doing okay?" Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, a crew of guys was checking out a scooter. One of them suggested, "Maybe it's the spark plug," while another guy lounging in an armchair wondered, "Could it be the coil instead?" Soon one of the guys suggested, "Let's take the scooter to a mechanic," but another guy groaned, "Ugh, think about the costs." The young man averted his gaze, looking off to the side. Gitae, adjusting a pair of brass knuckles, quipped, "With the number of guys here, you'll get why I'm using this to save some time." Faced with the snide remark, one of the guys asked, "What's your deal? Who are you?" Gitae replied bluntly, "I'm here to collect a debt." But the other guy shot back, "You better show who you are before any fighting starts." Out of nowhere, Gitae socked the guy right in the kisser. The guy hit the deck, groaning like he was auditioning for a melodrama. Panicking, another group member quizzed, "Who the heck is this dude?" Gitae didn't bother with answers and threw another punch at the young fella's face. The poor chap crumpled to the ground, leaving just one brave soul still on his feet. The last guy, spotting the brass knuckles, couldn't help but snicker. The impact's like a freight train. Gitae fixed his gaze on the lone survivor and quipped, "You'd make an excellent practice dummy, my friend." The young man, insulted and labeled a loser by Gitae, fired back, with threats, swearing he'd finish him off. Grinning, Gitae replied, "Those fools still don't get it." Yelling for Gitae to put a sock in it, the guy lunged forward to attack, bellowing, "A chump like him just needs one solid whack." He swung a punch, but completely whiffed when Gitae dodged like a pro. Seizing the moment, Gitae landed a solid hit on the dude's mitt and followed up with another punch. The guy staggered back, sporting a nice red face. With a smirk, Gitae dared him, give it your best shot. Realizing he was in deep, the man reluctantly accepted the challenge. With a steady stance, Gitae confidently said, come at. Declaring he would show the strength of a big mouth, the man readied himself for action. Finally, Doyle jumped in, taking charge by grabbing a metal pipe like he was in a game. Back in that scene, the guy in the green tracksuit was already sprawled on the ground. Eyeing the fella's state, Gitae remarked, there's not much hope if you're all defense and no speed. Doyle lifted the pipe high and slammed it down with a shout, time to meet your maker. Gitae, however, blocked the hit with crossed arms. Looking right at the young man, he asked, are you ready, Kang Doyle? Doyle, staying silent, just locked eyes with him. Grip tight around the pipe, Jong Gitae called out, Kang Doyle, you ready for this? Then he challenged him, yelling his name. Straining hard, Kang Doyle faced off against the menace. Gitae taunted, still as scared as a mouse caught in a corner. But Doyle lifted the pipe and shot back. Shut your trap. Jong Gitae swore Doyle would never take him down, not even if he were 6 feet under, and accused him. You just stood by while Byung-gu lost a finger, he shot back. Doyle cursed the whole scenario. Gitae, unfazed, commanded kneel. Kang Doyle complied, as Gitae proclaimed, this is where you belong. Moments later, Gitae told Doyle, lift your head up, then challenged, how dare you swing that pipe? At that instant, he cracked Doyle on the noggin, teaching him a lesson for daring to stand up to a veteran. Gitae insisted the young man lift his head again and smacked him in the mug, calling him worm. Kang Doyle hit the floor with a thud. Jong Gitae demanded beg for mercy. Bowing down Kang, Doyle surrendered to Jong Gitae. In a calm temple, worshippers prayed reverently at a statue. Han Arim with care served a meal to the group. One of the guys remarked, I've never seen your face around here before. To which she replied, this is our first time. The guy ever the charmer invited them. You should come back more often. While scrubbing dishes, Sungmin remarked to Jijon, Arim seems to be loving the vibe here. One of the other boys lugging a heavy vase grumbled about being the only one doing all the grunt work. A monk praised everyone's hard work, but Sungmin protested, I at least deserve to earn my meal. The monk then expressed his wish to invite them more frequently and kindly asked, please take a moment to relax before heading out. As darkness settled in, one of them remarked, wow, today flew by, and that little break really did us wonders. Two of the boys approached Jiban asking, can we come by the temple now and then to lend a hand? This place really calms me down. Sungmin chimed in jokingly, you totally look like a monk in training. Not long after, he found himself pondering, should I dive into this whole monk thing? Suddenly, a shout of fire rang out, causing pure chaos among everyone around. Jiban and his buddy dashed outside, trying to figure out where the ruckus was coming from. Outside, a monk was already battling the flames, while someone speculated that the fire might have been ignited by a rogue cigarette butt. A guy lamented the thoughtlessness of folks, and the monk reassured them, saying, hey, at least we caught the fire in time. He then tried to soothe everyone's nerves, but Sungmin admitted, honestly, I was pretty freaked out. One of the youths commented, I almost lost a decade off my life, and Sungmin echoed, seriously, this could have turned into a major disaster. Just then, Jiban spotted something odd, a hound dog business card stuck to the door. One of the guys pointed at the card, claiming, that definitely wasn't there before. In that moment, Kang Doyle appeared injured and pleading in a vision, telling Jiban not to come near him. Kang Doyle kept begging, insisting that Jiban stay back. Inside a car, a man with glasses inquired of his underling if he'd wrapped up organizing the match. From the street, the young man confirmed that both sides were ready, detailing it as a showdown between a gangster and a transfer student. In the back seat, the man checked if the gangster's name was Jong Gitae. Asking for a lighter, the woman beside him noted that the gangster hailed from Decent Industrial Technical School. As the vehicle rolled away, the man inquired about which gang he belonged to, getting the reply that he was associated with the J-Octo Association. The man mumbled to himself, repeating the association's name, but the young man on the street interrupted, pointing out he knew that the guy was also on their payroll. The young man continued mentioning that Gitae was eager to jump into the match with full enthusiasm. Pondering the situation, the man questioned whether the J-Octo Association was sending players to hype up the game. Soon after, he conceded that refusing was not an option, since the chance was just too good to pass up. The young man was tasked with announcing the match to everyone and promoting it as much as possible. But he ended up asking whose side the boss was on and calling him a fool, the man exclaimed. Of course he's rooting for the J-Octo Association. The scene then shifted to a leafy canopy. Along a path, Jiban sprinted through the forest. Racing through the foliage, he maintained a steady rhythm. When he reached a viewpoint, the boy showed off a high kick while stretching. Getting pumped up, he declared he would fight tooth and nail no matter what came his way. Reinforcing his determination, he vowed to become strong enough that no one could ever threaten him again. However, shortly after, his friends showed up sharing that the monk had let them know he would be around. One of them remarked, the climb was totally worth it, while another pleaded, can I have some chocolate, please? Breathless from the climb, Han Aryam desperately tried to catch her breath. Sungmin told Jiban that today was a big deal, and the other boy admitted he showed up because he was worried. One of the pals vowed to cheer with all their strength no matter who they were up against. Iroom chimed in, promising to root for him as well. Together, his friends pumped him up and Jiban responded with determination. Once they reached the fight venue, one of them pointed ahead, commenting on the heavy vibe in the air. Taken aback by the scene, Sungmin realized the fight would be happening in such a place. Quaking and unsure why, another boy asked if Jiban was okay. Noticing his friend's unwavering resolve, one of the guys made Sungmin wonder if their cheers were reaching him. Standing in front of the warehouse, a group of men waited quietly. Welcoming the crew, the fight organizer approached Jiban, saying it was a pleasure to see him on time. Keeping a friendly tone, one of the friends pointed a finger and accused the man of putting Jiban in danger by starting the fire. Perplexed by the boy's words, the man asked for clarification, and his buddy assured him that he was clueless too. Telling Jiban to disregard the chatter and concentrate on the fight, he left his friend feeling indignant. Capturing the vibe of the conflict, the organizer explained that expectations were through the roof and warned not to underestimate the riot. Urging Jiban to give it all, he had someone yelled for the gate to swing open. As soon as the gate creaked open, Jiban and his buddies peered inside. The warehouse was alive with roars from the crowd. Watching the hyped-up audience, they felt the intensity of the moment. From across the way, someone yelled Jiban's name. With his back turned, Jong Gitae stepped up and declared he was waiting. Slowly turning around, the gangster said Jiban should recognize him because of Doyle. Steeling himself, the boy prepared against his opponent. Taken aback by his presence, Ariam reacted while Sungmin asked if she knew who he was. Revealing the truth, one of the boys said that Jong Gitae was a gangster, shocking everyone. Stating it was time to finish what they started, Gitae radiated confidence. But first he announced a special guest, who would make Jiban thrilled to see. When the surprise was unveiled, both Jiban and Ariam gasped, holding their breath. Bound in the center, Kang Doyle insisted that Jiban shouldn't have shown up since he didn't want to be seen this way. Repeating his plea, he urged Jiban to get out. Covering her mouth, Ariam called out for Doyle in despair. Befuddled, his friends asked what was going on and why he looked that way. Coldly questioning, Jong Gitae asked Jiban if he understood why Doyle was in that mess. Staring at the scene, Jiban was at a loss for words. Vowing to take revenge for all he had endured, Jong Gitae asked Jiban if he truly wanted to save that guy. He revealed that the key to the chains was in his pocket and promised to hand it over if Jiban could take him down. But he set a condition for himself if he emerged victorious. Jiban's buddies, shocked by the wild suggestion, reacted immediately. Unfazed, Gitae boldly declared that none of them were interested in cash. Then he announced that if he won, he'd take 2 of Jiban's fingers and dared him to accept the challenge. In disbelief, his friends thought the condition was downright ludicrous. Trying to avoid the showdown, they argued that it was unacceptable and that the opponent was clearly out of his mind. Han Ariam, issuing a stern warning, advised that the guy was definitely cruel. A brief flashback flashed back to the day. Doyle's hands shook while clinging to a motorcycle. The memory carried on, revealing that Byung-gu had been so scared of Gitae that he had soaked his pants. Back to reality, the gangster questioned if Jiban was scared. Realizing the opponent's impact, Jiban noticed he had people trembling in fear. However, as he removed his jacket, he declared that he couldn't hold back any longer while his friends asked if he was actually going to fight. Grinning with excitement, Jong Gitae admired the young man's determination. With a flair for the dramatic, Jiban readied himself for the battle in the center of the arena. The crowd erupted in cheers while his friends looked on with clear worry. In the epicenter, the 2 contenders faced off, surrounded by eager spectators. With a megaphone in hand, the announcer boomed that the fight would start shortly and encouraged everyone to place their bets. Introducing the first contender, he called Jong Gitae the heavyweight of the underworld. Next, he introduced Jiban as the new student who had knocked out the reigning champ. Polling the audience about who would win, the announcer sparked excitement in the venue. A countdown kicked off, and in the control room, a bespectacled man kept tabs on everything happening. Noticing the crowd of over 2,000 live spectators, he marveled at the splendor of the event. Declaring the stage set, he urged both fighters to go all out until someone was bleeding. The match kicked off, and Jong Gitae lunged forward without an ounce of hesitation. He landed a knee strike on Jiban's head to start the action. However, the kid blocked the next attack and countered with a fierce kick. He swiftly backed away, looking for space, while the crowd continued to cheer like crazy. Shifting his stance, Jong Gitae prepped for another charge. Defending against a barrage of punches, Jiban watched each hit carefully. Even though his speed and strength were above average, he had never trained in boxing or martial arts. As a classic street fighter, Jiban was no pushover thanks to his solid muscle. "Are you scared?" Jong Gitae bellowed in anger. Charging forward, Jiban threw a straight punch to Gitae's ribs. Feeling the impact, he knew it landed cleanly and was effective. Reacting quick as a whip, Gitae hit Jiban in the face with a punch that barely tickled, he quipped, daring him to keep going. Taking note of his opponent's reaction speed, Jiban instinctively searched for opening. Despite lacking technical skills, the opponent managed to dodge and weave due to raw natural ability, and Jiban ended up on the receiving end of several hits. Firmly retaliating, the boy kicked Gitae right in the face. "Was that a massage?" he retorted. Jong Gitae sneered. "Do you genuinely believe you can take me down that easily?" he continued. "Let me show you what reality looks like." Gitae shouted as he charged in. With another hit, Jiban's anger flared up instead of fading. The crowd erupted in cheers for Jong Gitae. "Who's on top here?" one of Jiban's pals asked. "His defense is starting to crumble," another chimed in. Continuing to assess the situation, he pointed out that the opponent's build was massively better, and it would be disastrous if Jiban took a serious hit. One friend mentioned that Jiban's game plan was to slowly wear down his opponent. As for Gitae, he was all about ending it with one powerful blow. Watching the showdown, Ariam muttered, "If Jiban gets hit, it's curtains." But then she heard Kang Doyle's voice echoing nearby. Calling out to her from where he was being held, Ariam dashed away from the center of action. "You have to stop him," Doyle insisted. "Why'd you bring Jiban along?" he asked. Jiban was left with no option as she explained. "They threatened to set the temple where he lived on fire." "Damn it all," he swore. "Free me. I need that key," he reiterated. "The key's with Jong Gitae," she reminded him, trying to make him see the situation clearly. "I'll find a way to snag it," Doyle declared. That guy's as slippery as a snake, he warned. You never know his next move. Aryam nodded, struggling to keep her nerves steady. The fighters exchanged blows fiercely. Han Aryam redirected her focus to the arena, glued to every single action. Jiban hit him hard. Keep it going, one of his friends cheered. As the fight raged on, Jiban kept pummeling Jong Gitae. This is your moment. Go for it. Cheers erupted around, urging him on. Show what you've got. Hit harder, his friends shouted, giving him that extra push as he advanced on Jong Gitae. But Gitae was just waiting for Jiban to come close. It's a different game out here. Self-defense won't cut it, the fighter revealed. Then he bellowed, landing a punch. Jiban suddenly realized he had walked right into a trap. Power trumps everything, Gitae taunted. The aggressor slammed him in the face, jostling Jiban's head back. Jiban, his friends, cried out, unable to believe their eyes. This is the harsh truth, Jong Gitae roared. As he kept up the assault, he remarked, I've really fought on the streets. Do you think a delicate potted plant like you can take me? He then instructed the boy, know your place. Farewell, Gitae said as Jiban's vision started to blur. At that pivotal moment, he recalled someone cradling his face. Stay strong. The memory of a girl imploring him kept echoing. Please see it through. I love you. A surge of determination hit him hard, and his heartbeat quickened. Jiban stood up, fueled by newfound energy. Wake up, Han Aryam shouted. Yet the boy's eyes were locked on his foe. He swiftly blocked Jong Gitae's punch with both arms. You tough little bugger. The attacker exclaimed, shocked that Jiban had taken the hit. Even battered Jiban faced his rival and landed a counterpunch square on Gitae's face. Gitae staggered back a few steps. This is getting serious, one of Jiban's friends remarked. Nobody here is joking around. Jong Gitae, for his part, said, It's been ages since I felt anything quite like this. My excitement is through the roof. He acknowledged, You're better than I expected, but you're still just a light snack for me. He then charged forward. Jiban landed a kick on his opponent and stood his ground. Meanwhile, Jong Gitae declared, In our world, losers don't get to walk away. He proclaimed, The moment we go down, it's the end for us. Gitae bellowed, I won't let you win, smashing his fist into Jiban's face. Welcome to the undead. One of Jiban's buddies shouted out, claiming things were heating up even more. The two kept trading punches like it was a game. Jiban's pals noticed he wasn't really defending himself anymore. Instead, he was just sidestepping the hits. He dodged another swing, causing his foe to hurl some choice words. Filled with frustration, one of the friends pointed at Jiban. He stood there like a statue, his guard down, catching everyone off guard. Calling him a loser, Gitae charged in for the attack, but Jiban landed a knockout punch straight to the aggressor's chin. Kang Doyle pondered whether Jiban had cracked the code of his opponent's style and concluded that Gitae's moves were plain as day, aiming only for the one-hit wonders. Jiban had read the attacks like a book and discovered Gitae's Achilles heel. After dodging, he unleashed a mighty kick towards the aggressor. Next, the scene shifted to the young man holding a stick. Jong Gitae cursed and pointed the makeshift weapon at Jiban, ready for a showdown. The young man simply locked eyes with his rival. Jong Gitae roared, declaring that the real fight kicked off right then and there. Stating that the rules were out the window, he changed the vibe of the arena. Jiban's friends started calling him a coward, accusing him of bending the rules. Even the match announcer chimed in, pointing out that wielding a weapon was against the rules. But Gitae just told the naysayers to shut it and asked if they thought this was just a game. Then he dared anyone in the crowd to step up, turning to Jiban, provoking him to wrap things up. This isn't just a game, it's a showdown between us two, Jiban agreed. It's a real fight, Gitae roared back. Charging at the young man, he swore to crush him. The aggressor swung the torch, goading Jiban to come at him. Jiban's friends watched in disbelief, muttering about cheating. Don't mess with thugs, you kid, one yelled at Jiban. But the young man countered with a kick that blocked the attack and followed up with another smack on his opponent's head. Jong Gitae hit the ground, taken down by Jiban. The crowd whispered that he finished labeling him pathetic for being a tough guy. At that moment, Kang Doyle's chain key slipped out of his pocket and clattered to the floor. Han Aryam spotted it. This isn't over, Gitae proclaimed as he got back on his feet. I won't quit until one of us is wiped out, he yelled. Jiban sprinted towards his opponent and delivered a solid jab. With another hit, he sent Gitae sprawling to the ground. I can't lose to a failure like you, Gitae pleaded from his knees. You've got no reason to feel wronged, Jiban shot back. You're just a bully who preys on the weak. You might think you're tough, crushing dreams, but that doesn't make you strong. Enjoy living in mediocrity forever. He then lambasted his rival. Suddenly, Jong Gitae whipped out a knife. The aggressor lunged, aiming to stab Jiban from behind. The crowd gasped in disbelief. Look out behind, one of Jiban's friends shouted, trying to warn him. You shouldn't have turned your back on a thug, Gitae jeered, inching forward with the knife. He knocked Jiban down and readied himself for the strike. I'll finish you off, Jong Gitae vowed. You'll regret crossing me once you see your reflection, the aggressor threatened, hoisting the knife up high. I'm the ultimate victor, he declared, clearly enjoying himself. But then a flash of flames hit Gitae's face. Kang Doyle jumped in, whacking him with a flaming stick, pinning him down. Then he turned to Jiban, checking if he was all right. Jiban just nodded in response. Aryam couldn't help but wonder when Doyle managed to break free, and her pal realized it was her who had sprung him loose. Kang Doyle shot a glare at Jiban and asked if he could wrap things up. He plopped down on Gitae and started popping his fingers like they were candy. Hold on, Jiban interjected. Don't keep going, Jong Gitae pleaded from his spot on the ground. Why not? Doyle smirked back. Knock it off, you little brat, Gitae begged. You were doing the same thing. The young guy reminded him. Yeah, but I'm special, Gitae insisted. Special, how Doyle shot back. I'm of a different caliber, he proclaimed, turning his head like he was too good for this. Just one more to go, Kang Doyle coolly warned. He cracked another finger of Gitae's. Now he was gearing up to snap the final one. But Jong Gitae was begging for a timeout. Yelling out, Gitae hurled insults, calling him a jerk while bragging about his own tough guy credentials. Then he threw down a He warned that his boss would take him out if he found out. Kang Doyle, unfazed, inquired why he'd even tell the boss. He dubbed the attitude as childish. Yet just then, the match organizer barged in with his crew, barking orders for them to halt. Jijon had his arm out, blocking the organizer from getting any closer, while Doyle was still looming over Gitae. The organizer then turned to Jijon and asked if he realized what he was doing and if he was ready for the fallout. Kang Doyle glanced back over his shoulder. Jijon also shifted his gaze to check him out, and Doyle just flashed a grin. Please stop. I've seen some stuff, trust me. Jong Gitae was practically begging at this point. Kang Doyle, with a snarky tone, remarked, now you look even more like human garbage. He declared he felt embarrassed for even giving Gitae an ounce of respect. Then he snapped Jong Gitae's last finger like it was a twig. A girl in the crowd gasped, covering her mouth. The onlookers gasped, shocked by the brutal display. The match organizer declared it all null and void, stating chaos had erupted. But the crowd chimed in, pointing fingers, insisting it was the gangster who broke the rules first. A gambler who had placed bets on the gangster begrudgingly admitted Jijon's win. Soon enough, the crowd was cheering for Jijon's victory. The organizer shot daggers at Jijon, who just shrugged it off. Jijon's buddies shouted out. We all witnessed the opponent get wrecked. The crowd kept chanting Jijon's name as he stood next to Doyle. Jijon turned his head to check out what was happening. Meanwhile, in his office, the bespectacled man mulled over the events unfolding, which were way crazier than he anticipated. He acknowledged that Jijon had taken down a gangster from the J-Octo Association during peak viewership. Such a jaw-dropper would make the J-Octo Association look like a joke, and he cursed the massive financial hit coming his way. He then laid all the blame squarely on Jijon's shoulders. Next, he racked his brain about how to deal with this mess, cursing the twist of fate. A sleek black car pulled up to the fight scene. Inside, the driver informed the higher-up of their arrival. But the boss told them to hold their horses. The driver spotted Jong Gitae strutting out of the warehouse and quickly reported that Gitae had made his exit. His superior simply barked for the driver to shut off the engine. Jong Gitae approached the vehicle, shouting for help. Help me, those jerks really did a number on me. The attackers were still at the scene, and he pleaded to catch them while they could. But his superior just decked him in the head, then kicked him aside. Jong Gitae crumpled to the ground, crying out for help from his boss. Didn't I tell you to steer clear of fights with students? The man scolded. Gitae tried to explain himself, stammering incoherently. His superior responded with another kick, landing it while Gitae was down. While Gitae mumbled apologies, Jijon and his crew checked out the whole scene from a distance. Gitae acted like a big shot, but deep down he was just a nobody. Kang Doyle commented on the whole show. Kang Doyle expressed his thanks to Jijon, then gave a nod of gratitude to his pal. Hanarium, however, steps in saying, you all really need some priority medical care. She insists they head to the hospital, but Doyle shoots back, I just need a couple days to rest up. Then he strolls off with Jijon, looking for his agreement. In a flashback, Jijon ponders when he'll finally be able to forget the one who could either make his heart race or bring it to a halt. A cluster of students saunters down the street. In a classroom, a teacher warns, don't doze off. Next, two girls confront Hanarium, grilling her about giving Jijon a phone and calling her actions absurd. Yena then directly asks, so do you plan on dating him? Arium hesitates to respond, which prompts Yena to remind her that she knows all about Arium's crush on Jijon. But Arium insists it's more than just dating. The other girl inquires, what do you mean by that? She elaborates that she feels an overwhelming curiosity about Jijon and is eager to learn everything about him. One of the girls accuses her of being deceptive and trying to charm Jijon. She then brings up Yena's relationship with Jijon. Hanarium reiterates, we're just talking. Yena retaliates with a slap across her face. She demands quit playing games and declares, I won't let you have Jijon. The two girls then strut away, leaving her in the dust. Hanarium touches her face and mumbles softly, deceptive. Referring to Yena, she wonders if she couldn't have shown just a tad bit of remorse.